A board workshop of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Tuesday, May 24th, 2022, beginning at 5:30 p.m. here in the boardroom, Administration Building. This is the Dr. Ricardo Chapa boardroom at the Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District at 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen. At this meeting, there may be discussion by the board on items and subjects as listed as follows. Before we bring up item number 2, the public comments, I'd like to ask everyone to please join us in a moment of reflection and just think about those families that were touched today by senseless tragedy here within the great state of Texas. Thank you. We will move on to item number 2, which is public comment, and for that we'll bring forth Sylvia Tanguma, who wants to talk about pay raises. Again, let me go over the policy for public comment. The board encourages public comments at all board meetings according to board policy BED, local board meetings, public participation, and related district administrative procedures and practices. Persons wanting to make a statement to the board are required to register within the superintendent secretary's office 1 hour prior to the start of the scheduled meeting. Audience participation at a board meeting is limited to the early stages of a meeting. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board unless requested. Each participant is limited to 2 minutes per meeting to make comments to the board. At regular board meetings, the board shall permit public comments regardless of whether the topic is an item on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. At all other board meetings, public comments shall be limited to only those items on the agenda posted with the notice of the meeting. The board shall not deliberate or decide regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. If an issue is mentioned on tonight's agenda, the board will defer discussion of the issue until the appropriate time during the meeting. Should the speaker drift from the stated subject or become disruptive or abusive, he or she will be given 1 warning. If a second warning is required, then the speaker may forfeit the remaining time allotment, and the board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. The board has adopted complaint policies that are designated to secure at the lowest administrative level a prompt and equitable resolution of complaints and concerns. Please refer to the following policies. For students and/or parent complaints, that's policy FNG. For employees, that's policy DGBA. And for citizens, that's policy GF. Copies of district policies are available on the MISD website at www.mcallenisd.org. So, Ms. Tanguma, your time will begin once you start addressing the board.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Good evening, President Forina, Dr. Gonzalez, and members of the board. My name is Sylvia Tanguma, the president of McAllen American Federation of Teachers. Some members of our union are here in support of our Texas AFT Respect and Raise campaign. Many veteran teachers have reached out to us expressing their dissatisfaction with the district, considering not giving an adjustment to teachers with more than 20 years of experience. This has made them feel the district does not value them as professionals or their years of experience. Some have asked if the district is saying that they are not producing now that they have 20 plus years or more experience than a teacher with little or no experience. I want to share some survey results with you. We polled our members and found that of the ones who responded, 100% of them feel they deserve a robust pay raise, and that 2% is not acceptable. They also feel increases in pay should match surrounding districts.
1 minute.
Many are feeling overwhelmed and not valued. When asked if they felt they had a healthy work-life balance, 76% said no. They don't feel they do. When asked if they had replied no, which statement best describes your work-life balance, 63% said they are too tired after work to do anything with their family. 37% said they are expected to work long hours to achieve their work target, and 10% felt their inflexible work hours caused childcare and domestic issues. Another question that was at the top 3 issues that cause work-related stress, 1 was salary, number 2 was workload, and number 3 was paperwork. 74% of respondents felt the district is taking them for granted. When asked if they would leave the school district if they could get another position, 60% said yes, 6.8% said no, and 34% said they were unsure. We also ask if they have considered leaving, which of these would make them likely to stay. 75% said pay incentives, 51% said changes to workload and duties, and 42% said changes to benefits. I didn't get to finish the rest, but.
If it's not much longer, I'll give you another 30 seconds.
All right. This year has been extremely challenging, and the work that is being asked of employees along with the long hours they are putting in is not reflected in their pay, in the pay they are receiving. I'd like to say this again, as I did last week. How do we make our school a place of joy and learning for all? We all know it is a collective effort that takes dedicated and committed staff. We must demonstrate our commitment to our workers through a healthy pay increase that will retain as well as attract high-quality staff. An investment in our staff is an investment in our students and the future of McAllen ISD.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. President, is it all right if we should get a copy of that?
Yeah, if it's available for us.
Would you like to have a copy?
Definitely. Do you want me to email it to
If
you?
you could
or-
give
If you'll
it to
just-
our staff secretary, she can make a copy before the end of the meeting.
Most definitely. Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Luis Garza discussing teacher pay. Excuse me.
Dr. Gonzalez, Mr. Forina, members of the board. My name is Luis Garza. I'm a teacher at Memorial High School. Yesterday, I made a public comment about the proposed teacher compensation plan for the next school year and how unfair it is for those with 20 or more years of service. Like I mentioned at yesterday's meeting, skipping 20-plus years teachers in any percentage increase will only lower morale, excuse me, any further. McAllen ISD has spent thousands and in some cases tens of thousands of dollars for teacher professional development for those that have been teaching for 20 or more years. It makes sense that you would want to keep those with the most training, excuse me, those with the latest and best information at McAllen ISD, seeing the tremendous, amount of resources already spent on them. But by not including these experienced teachers in a similar raise structure for those with 0 to 19 years experience is frankly a bad move on your part. You are incentivizing 20-plus year teachers to take their training and seek out a district that will compensate them for their level of skill.
1 minute.
At a previous board meeting, a board member purportedly stated the district was being equitable for all by raising salaries for 0 to 19-year teachers more than for 20-plus year teachers. But as everyone is experiencing cost of living increases, withholding the proposed salary increase for teachers with 20 or more years of experience, excuse me, does not demonstrate the equity the district professes to hold true.
30 seconds.
If you truly want to be equitable, there should be a raise for all, not just for some. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
President, is it all right if we get a copy of this as well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you would, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
Thank you, Mr. President.
That is all for our public comments. So, if we are ready to proceed, we have a request to bring up item 4, discussion of the 2022-2023 budget. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Human Resources Division will present the stipend information along with the potential 22-23 salary increase scenarios. Mr. Todd Miller, our Assistant Superintendent for HR, will share more information. This item is for information purposes only. Mr. Miller.
Dr. Gonzalez, I'm going to hand it off to Cindy Richards. She'll handle the salary part, and then I'll come back with the stipend to wrap it up.
Mr. President, just for a point of order, there was no objection on my part. I'm sure there's no other objection that we bring item 4 up, since we can't vote on the actual motion. Just for
Point.
the record, there was no objection.
Point taken. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and Board of Trustees. Tonight, we do have an update on compensation based on discussion we had at the previous budget workshop. At that particular workshop, administration is recommending the 2% pay increase for all staff throughout the district. And we've included that slide here. It would cost the district a little over $5.4 million district-wide. And then for the general fund, it would be approximately almost $3.5 million. That would be a 2% for teachers, equivalent to about $1,140. Based on some of the feedback and input we received from the trustees last week, we came in with two scenarios. The first one was what would pay increase be for our teacher librarian group if the entire amount of that 3.4 million was actually allocated just to that particular pay group. So what you have here in this scenario, first line is the recommended, which is still administration's recommendation of 2%. The scenario A here is allocating that entire 3,485,143 to teachers. In doing that, the increase would be approximately 3.5% for the teacher librarian group, 0% for all other groups, administrative education, administrative management, and all other staff. Again, that would result from a 2% increase to a 3.5% increase. And in terms of dollars, that would be $1,140 up to $1,980. And of course, that would include any type of equity adjustments within the teacher librarian pay scales, in addition to, as a result of trying to address the compression issues. The second takeaway that we had from last week's meeting was what would happen if we were to place a pause on any type of pay compensation to school leadership and school leadership and central administration. At last week's board meeting, it was indicated through Mr. Miller's presentation that there were 79 staff under school leadership and 32 under central administration. And what we've done here is we have given you a listing of what those particular positions are that make up those 79 staff in school leadership and 32 in central administration. As you can see, they're listed up there. By doing that, again, it's just a reminder that this makes up about 2% of the staff in school leadership, 1% of staff for central administration. That 2% increase was approximately $131,583 for school leadership, and for central administration, it was $64,483. For a total of $196,066. So that would be the money that we would have to allocate to the teacher librarian group if we decided to place a pause and not provide an increase to that particular group. So what you see on the next slide, again, we're balancing out to the funding that we have available, which is $3,485,143. And we're comparing it again to administration's recommendation. In this particular case, what would happen is we allocated, again, that $196,000 to teachers and librarians. It would go from a 2% pay increase for them to a 2.3% pay increase in that category. It would also result in an increase from $1,140 to $1,300 on there. Again, keeping in mind that not everybody listed under administrative education and administrative management are necessary. It's a larger group than what y'all saw listed in this particular group in there, because it is a bigger pool. So everybody else in those pool would receive their 2%. It would be 2% for all other staff in administrative education, 2% for all other staff in administrative management, and of course all other staff at the 2%. This would also include any type of equity adjustments for those particular pay categories, with the exception of school leadership and central administration, since they're not part of this calculation. And again, we've got that listed here. And the last slide indicates all the positions that are actually, it's not an all-inclusive listing, but it's most of the listing of the different positions that are within those administrative education and administrative management listing on there. So that concludes my report.
Mr. Suarez.
And this might be a
Microphone,
question.
please. Your microphone.
This might be a question that I don't know if you have the numbers to, but I'm sure the board would like to know, and I know I would like to know. Do you know the amount of teachers that we have that are 20 plus versus the amount of teachers that we have 0 to 5 years?
I don't, but I'll see if I can find it real quick. 0 to 5, and then
0
20 plus, right?
Right, 20 plus versus the 0 to 5. And for now, that's the only question I have. If you don't have the answer right this second, that's fine. I'll yield the floor, President.
Thank you, Trustee Suarez. Any other questions for Mrs. Richards?
Those might be off, that's why I kind of want to,
You're saying just for teachers?
right. That's fine, if you don't have it right this second, that's fine. It'll be followed up with Dr. Gonzalez and the staff later.
Again, any other questions for Mrs. Richards?
We'll go through them all and I'll come back.
I do have a general question, but I'd like to see everything and then, have discussions as we go along as well. But one general question, and it's kind of follow-up from yesterday, is we made some allocations on projects through TRE, which I understand we're almost done, maintenance tax note, and ESSER funds. And we were leveraging the ESSER funds to try to address the gap in HVACs and especially HVACs, and try to get us up to date in current maintenance of those equipment. Have we signed all the contracts under the ESSER funds for all of that equipment at this time?
For the most part, we have. We just entered into some HVAC contracts this last board meeting. I can get a list of what contracts are pending.
So maybe a follow-up question is, how much funding of the ESSER funds that we had allocated for HVACs or any other construction has not been already apportioned either through board action or a contract?
Okay, I can get that information for you. I wouldn't know, because we have the maintenance tax notes HVAC projects as well as the ESSER projects, and also considering the rising costs of just supplies, right? So I'd have to do an analysis on that. I'll get you that information.
Just a general observation is that, we've done well to leverage maintenance tax notes, tax ratification, election. Thank you to the community for supporting that. And obviously the ESSER funds that came in, as well as due diligence in leveraging taxpayer money in all the various projects. Without increasing taxes, in fact, taxes have gone down as far as the tax rate. And we made some commitments to staff in the neighborhood of 20 million. I get that. But it makes sense going forward that we no longer can do another TRE without going through some significant assessments, which are now going to be required by law starting next year. We can no longer do another maintenance tax note, as I understand it, capped out there. And so the only possibility is to look at unless the legislature does something different in the next session, and they might, is a bond, and a very limited bond. And obviously the other is for us as a body corporate to work with our legislators to change the formula for a rich school district, as we were considered, is to when we do that sort of action, that we get more than the 10-15% that other districts would get closer to 50% on that. And I think we've had several conversations about beginning to prioritize our facilities moving forward so the community as a whole would know that. But the long and the short that I see it is that if we have funds still left in the ESSER funds, we need to consider moving that over into the staff. I really think we ought to do that. And unless any of the contracts haven't been fully executed, then I would ask for those to be brought back to the board for review again prior to actually executing those contracts. As a second look, as we look at this as an entirety. Because if there are some ESSER funds still available there that we had allocated for these projects, I understand, and I think we all do, but a lot of things have happened since then. Inflation is going rampant. Fuel costs. I mean, it's putting a lot of hardship, and that's why we made some earlier decisions about moving up the 2,000 instead of the 2 years in December and the following December. We moved it up to put all that up front, and even then, I'm sure a lot of that's already been eaten up. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I wanted to capture the whole thought process that I'm having, so you understood in the context of that is. And I think that if there's any ESSER remaining funds, that needs to be put back on the table and reallocated.
Duly noted. Thank you, trustee.
Thank you.
Trustee Aliceda.
Mr. Miller, what's the only data I'm looking at is from 2019, the difference between a zero-year teacher and a 20-year. In 2019, a zero-year teacher was 49,100, and a 20-year was 62,520. What is the zero-year teacher now and a 20-year teacher now?
Can I use 21, 22 data?
Yes.
Okay, for a zero-year teacher this year is $51,000, and the 20-year teacher is $61,730. And if I may go back and answer Mr. Suarez's question. 0 to 5-year teachers, 326. And I'm gonna go 21 plus, because that's, we capped at 20. 21 plus is 336, 10 more teachers than the first group.
What's the number of teachers total?
1623.
I'm sorry?
1,623.
Can you give me those 0 to 5 numbers again that Trustee Aliceta asked for?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so zero-year teacher this year, 21-22 school year is $51,000. 20-year teacher is $61,730.
If I may, librarians? The teacher numbers, that include the librarians or just teacher in the
Teachers
class?
and librarians, I'm sorry.
Teacher librarians, okay, great.
The TEA slope for teachers 0 years to 20 years is a difference of $20,000. Our difference is $10,000.
I think that we do need to look at ESSER funds, and if there's any ESSER funds that haven't, maybe we've allotted them for something and committed them to something, but if those projects can somehow, if they're not, I'm sorry. If those projects that we've allocated for ESSER, if some of them, we need to revisit them, I think we need to do that. That's quite a spread to be off from what TEA has, and I think we need to do better.
Trustee Alvarado.
So it's probably for Ms. Richards, it's just more of a comment. So I was asking the number of teachers, and let's just go to scenario A, just for my illustration, if you can, on the screen. So you go to 3.5, and it's roughly 1,980 for teachers, right? If I want to go to 6%, then I just double that, and that comes out to roughly about 3 million. So to your point, Trustee Sandoval and Trustee Peña, if we were to go that route, then we have to find that money in the budget somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's what the question is, do we have ESSER funds, available for that? And I think the other thing that I want to throw in there as well too, and I know you used it for, we haven't voted on it. We had a settlement, Dr. Gonzalez, and that one I know is going to, but I thought without that, you're going to have to go into the fund balance to pay for that. And so I know it's, kind of, I wasn't 100% decided on that, where that money was going to come back to us on, so that's also an option. And I think the other one on the table too, and we just got to be fully transparent, that's why I asked it yesterday at the meeting, is where are we with Quinta? Because if that falls through, then that's about 4 million. And again, I understand that it's a recurring cost, and so 4 million this year, we might not have it next year, but if there's a way to do a Christmas bonus, I know you've been bringing that up, sir, I don't want to steal your thunder on that one, but, you take our teachers, divide by 500, it uses most of that money, but it's something. Or if we can bridge that gap and get it to 5% on the scenario A, then we're a little bit closer and still have a little bit for, so I think that's kind of where, I'm not you, obviously, so, I mean, I try to do some numbers here, I got a headache, so that's why you're sitting there, because you know this. But I think Dr. Gonzalez, this is a workshop. We're trying to see if there's any scenarios where we can get to that point. And I just wanted to throw out where I was leaning towards. But, and the last question is if we were to take that settlement out of the budget and we had to go to fund balance, what would our fund balance be at? It's 8 million minus what the fund balance is right now.
Right, I'm trying to go back and.
About 40, about 48, 40, 40, 40,
What's the optimum, what the
47.
state wants us to have?
Yes,
Not-
and I've got it here also.
We're only over by a couple of days.
We're only over a couple, right?
Yes,
So,
we are.
okay.
Now, the other thing we want to keep in mind is that, again, when we presented the 2%, it was because that was an amount that was sustainable for the budget moving forward, not only for this year. Again, when we look at recurring costs, we are looking for what the budget can sustain moving forward. As we look at the settlement and we look at the quinta, I think there are obviously areas that can be explored. But again, as you mentioned, they are one-time projects. And because we are experiencing a decline in enrollment, subsequently a decline in ADA, subsequently a decline in state funding, it's probably not a best practice for us to use those type of one-time funds for recurring costs. Certainly, we could explore the possibility of what would happen if we elected to do something like a one-time at a future date, but for us to incorporate it into an operating budget, and that's why it's an operating, because it just has to sustain itself. It's hard to really support it from that angle. Yes.
And I agree with you, and I think that's why I mentioned a hybrid. I think the other thing is too, I think I know we can talk about why our student attendance has dropped. A lot of it is just the cost of McAllen, but I think the other thing coming out of the pandemic, we should hopefully start seeing some gains in the next few years. I think the programs that your team has put, Dr. Gonzalez, and we're marketing, we're knocking on doors, we're doing all the right things, so, hopefully that starts turning around. It already has, but turning around where we see a little bit more money coming in. So I'm not saying that we use all of it for that, because I know it's a recurring cost, but if there's a way to, kind of use some of it maybe for a one-time bonus and the other to kind of increase from a 3.5 to 4%. I mean, I'm just, again, workshop is to throw everything up on the board, for lack of another word. And if it's not sustainable, it is what it is. But I think, to Trustee Sandoval's point, I don't want to I don't want to dwell on it too much. It's changed a little. Well, it's changed a lot. That's not the right word. Deflation and all that, but just the past couple of years, just what our teachers have done. And I'll say it again. I really think we always say here every year, there's only so much we can do, and I know that. But at some point, we need to start pushing back on the state and really electing people that are and it's not just our local. It's not them necessarily, because they don't have the votes. But we need to do something across the boat when we can spend $2 billion on something over here, but we can't spend it on teachers. We can't spend it on that funds for securing our schools and all that. So at some point we need to do something. So again, I know from our portion, I'm probably asked to put on the agenda, Mr. Florina.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, President Florina.
Mr's fine, that
where
works.
we can talk about what we can do from legislative and outreach and all that, because we need to put pressure on them where they control their money. So anyway, I yield.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee Suarez.
One of the good things about this discussion and these public comments is that what I've heard from our employees is that they're not advocating that one should get more than the other, or that there shouldn't be a raise across the board. It's what's happening to the 21-year plus. And so the good news is that there's 336 educators here who are 21-year plus, and they feel somewhere along the line neglected. And the recurring cost obviously is something that we cannot afford, but if there's money left over from an ESSER, if there's money left over from projects, and something that we should start budgeting is an incentive for a 21-year plus, to where they would get an annual bonus I think that would help. It would be a lot easier to put that into our budget, and it would also incentivize the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds employees to stick around, and the teachers that have been around for 21, 22, 20 years, 3 years say, look, every year that I stay here, I get a $500 bonus, I get a $1,000 bonus, and that incentivizes, because in a perfect world, you're right. The 20-year plus, we've invested all that money to train them, and then they leave to another district. Well, we just lost money, right? I mean, that's what happens. But if we can do a one-time cost, and it wouldn't be impacting our budget, you know, because you're right, you know, $4 million, that only solves the solution for 1 year, and then we're in the whole $8 million next year, okay? And like Quinta Mazatlán, okay, the city is not going to back from it. And one thing to look at, you know, as we look at it now, is that even if this project costs more, we still got into this program with the same amount of investment, which means we're not having to invest more. And the city's going to come up with the funds to do it because there's so many stakeholders at stake. More importantly, our kids are at stake there. So those are just some of the things to look at. If we look at HVAC projects and look at what's happening, McAllen ISD, nor any school district in the state of Texas or in the United States will be able to afford an HVAC unit at the way prices are increasing without ESSER funds. There is no way. And I'm telling you, because I'm in this, you know, I'm in this profession, and it's ridiculous. It's gotten to the point where there's nobody actually bidding projects out because they can't even afford the bond for these projects, which means every school in the United States, the first thing they went to go do is change their HVAC units, because that's the most expensive purchase for a school district. And if we were to wait and not use our ESSER funds for that, I'm telling you, there's no way we would be able to afford it. So I think these discussions are good, and it's just my opinion. But if the consistent complaint, or not complaint, but just, you know, reaching out to us for help is the 21-year plus teachers and employees, then those are the ones that we need to focus on and find a creative way to incentivize them not to leave. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Trustee Suarez. Trustee Saldivar.
The way we do it is like we've done with all the other projects, and I don't like the word, but it's been 17 years since the last successful bond, and it's been 7 years since the last effort in that regard. When we did the TRE, it brought in a lot of funding that it was able to address a lot of the key issues we needed to be addressed, including security at the elementary schools. And so there will always be a way to fund these projects. There'll just be a different way. Because the question I ask from time to time from the administration is, where would we be and what would we have done had we not gotten the ESSER funds? And life would have gone on, and we would have made some decisions, including probably and gone out for a bond a lot sooner than we did. Because that's how school districts fund projects, including HVAC systems and roofs and buildings and the like. So that can be addressed and will be addressed if this board chooses to go that route at some point in the future. And frankly, with a bond that's about to be paid off in 2030 from the one in 2005, we're basically playing equity right now. And we're the lowest tax rate, the lowest property rate, double A, if I remember right, it's double A. No other school district around has that. And so we as board members have to go out to the community and say to the community, this is where we are. This is how we prioritize our age facilities. This is everything we put into it. And yes, we could use ESSER for that, but the fact of the matter, we can ask for it another way. And that's already by law, that already exists and can be done. And that takes care of the immediacy of taking care of our employees, all employees, who we said from the beginning, you know, we will get through this together, and they stepped up. The TELPO report I just recently saw, I don't know if it's ready for publication, so I'm not going to give numbers, but it's very encouraging. In the middle of a pandemic, it's very encouraging. That did not happen by circumstance. That was a lot of hard work by a lot of people. Food service getting food to the children so they have nutrition, at least 2 meals a day. Bus drivers getting children from point A to point B. Clerks getting all the reports in on time. teachers in the classroom, special ed teachers working with special dyslexia, you name, go down the list. We would not be in this situation today if it wasn't for these teachers, for these staff. And so there is a way, hablando se puede componer todo, there is a way to sort this out. We're just gonna have to make some really hard decisions. That's all it is. And this is no different than what we were elected to do. The other is we need to look at continued projects, that we keep adding projects and bringing projects online. And I asked the other day, has our per student allocation from the state of Texas increased? Every time a new innovative idea gets put into play, it costs money. And it's important, and we need to do it. But we're not taking anything off the table either that may not be working or may no longer be needed anymore. And so I think we need to be looking at that, because that is crunching us to a situation where we're taking care of all facilities, taking care of all the programs, and they need to be, don't get me wrong. But we're leaving out the core of who we are, and that is the instructional core, which is the teacher, the student, and the family. That's why they choose districts. That's why they come to school. That's why they pick McAllen ISD, or they pick whoever they pick, because they feel that relationship's there and they're being valued. And so one of the things I suggest that we should really think about, and I know it's going to get some folks a little upset, is but I think we need to rethink the elementary IB program. I mean, I support it. I think it's important. But when you get to this point, does it make sense when we've already put into the IQ is fully ingrained into our organizational structure, for which the IB at the elementary was supposed to have those tenets in there, but now we're using IQ. So does it make EQ? Does it really make sense for us to be funding IB at the elementary school? And whatever funds those are, move somewhere else. The other is we had a great opportunity to get rid of some property plus save cost of a roof, and we didn't do it. And that's okay, we didn't. But now we have 3 pieces of property we're trying to dispose of, and the market kind of slowed up on us. So I think we need to look at remaining properties, and where are we on that? Are we in the 75 percentile or greater? If we're not, you have to rethink that, because those are costs that to pay for running a facility at 50 percentile is taking away from teachers' salary and pay. Simple as that.
Thank you, Trustee Saldivar. Trustee Peña.
So a lot of what I was gonna say, Sam, and I must reiterate, one of the things that Trustee Suarez said is we're gonna lose those teachers that we've invested a lot of money in, those 21 plus teachers. We're not just gonna lose teachers that we've invested money in, we're gonna lose tenured teachers that have a lot of knowledge and wisdom and experience that they impart onto these 0 to 5 teachers, because those 0 to 5 year teachers need those tenured teachers to guide them and support them and help them. And we're an innovative district. I'm so proud to be sitting here because of the innovation that Dr. Gonzalez and the team and staff have brought to this district. And with that innovation, I mean, we keep adding new and innovative things, but I think we need to. There's some big projects that we have on the table, and if some of them just have not moved forward as fast as they can, and maybe they can be pushed back a little, then we need to look at that. We simply cannot afford to lose a 0 to 5 teacher, 5 to 10, much less a 20 plus year tenured teacher. We can't. And so we need to go back and look at some of those innovative projects that are big money projects and see how we can, maybe we move into a phased out project there. Maybe one of those big innovative projects we can, fund halfway right now and fund halfway later on when we are in a better situation. But if we're going to we're at a crossroads right now. Our kids have suffered so much through the pandemic, and we've got all these mental health issues. We all know what happened today in Uvalde, Texas, and our prayers are with that community and every district that hopefully never has to face that. But if we're not taking care of our staff, all of these innovative projects that we're spending so much money on are for what? So if we can phase that funding of those large projects, and I'm gonna say it, Quinta's one, UTRGV is another one, huge money in both projects. I love both projects. My background is in education, so I know the value of those projects. But I also know the value of our teachers, and I know the value of, you know, if we start losing all those tenured teachers, who are our new teachers gonna rely on? You know, we can do all the training we want in the world, but that, every time we pull teachers out for training, where kids are losing instruction, you know? We're building great teachers, but kids are losing instruction because they have to have a sub or somebody else in the classroom. And so we really need to go back and look at those big projects, and if there's any way we can free up some money, we need to start looking at that as well.
Trustee Alvarado.
And I just want to echo what you said, and that's why I bring up Quinta, because I'm all for kids, I'm for kids, and I like that program. However, the UTRGV, when Dr. Gonzalez presented, came after the fact, and I love that program better than I like the Quinta. I think that's going to impact more. So talking what you're saying with making, along those same lines you are saying, Trustee, something about making tough decisions, that's where Quinta comes up to me. I don't see it the same impact. You know, the city is over budget on that by a lot. I don't see the same draw. If we're talking about, you know, bringing new kids to the district and that was going to be a way to do it, I think the UHRGV program is more effective, and I think having happy teachers is more effective because they're out there recruiting. And so, again, it's not that we're not for kids or anything like that, but, you know, at this, unfortunately, there's going to be some tough decisions. And again, I just want to reiterate, you know, you brought up the IB. I'm not necessarily for or against it, you know, but I understand why you bring it up because it needs to be discussed. So if we're going down this route and we use $4 million, then we have next year to look at Crockett. We have next year to look at all the other inventories. We have to look at the IB program and start making some cuts. And if it's not fitting into, you know, the overall mission of it. And I like IB, but, you know, again, before anybody emails me again, I'm not talking about high school IB, and I'm not talking about junior high IB.
No.
We will not touching that, right? So please, I know sometimes it gets misconstrued. I know the difference. We're talking about elementary, okay? So anyway, just want to say that, Dr. Gonzalez, I support, I voted for Quinta. I was a little on the fence. I went back and I ended up voting for it. I'm having a little buyer's remorse, and I can only speak for myself and nobody else. I still support the kids, but I just like your UTRGV program a little bit better.
Trustee Saldivar.
Thank you. Wow, I've said quite a bit. I just have a couple of questions. Does the school district have a cap for salary when it comes to employees, especially teachers? Is a salary cap?
Teachers are at the 20-year mark. If you're new to the district, this is important. If you're new to the district, you come in from another district and you got 20 years experience, that's capped at that 61,730. Subsequent years, you'll get whatever the general pay increase is, be it 1140 or whatever that additional increase is.
So there is a cap.
At 20 years, yeah, we showed that.
There is a cap for teachers in the district at 20 years.
New to the district, 20
Doesn't
years.
matter, there's a cap.
Yes.
If you got 20 years plus in McAllen ISD, whether you're new, used, slightly used, refurbished, whatever, there's a cap, right? You
Yeah.
cannot make any more than that when you come into the district. And I don't mean to be this, but I get a little frustrated sometimes because this is very important. We're really at a crossroads here, and we got to make some really tough decisions. And if there is a cap, then no wonder we're having the situation, as Trustee Aliceta pointed out, when the state is at a $20,000 gap and we're at a 10. And so during the last House Bill 3, we tried to decompress that as much as we could. And I know the administration has made some efforts, but it sounds like we're compressing ourselves back into the same situation.
I'm a little confused.
May I ask for clarification from Trustee Aliceta on the 20-year, the TEA, what is the TEA reference again?
The TEA slope, hold on, this is my other spreadsheet.
As you're doing that, so if you've been teaching us 30 years, are you capped at 61?
No, that's what I said. So if you're new to the district, you're coming into the district with 20 years of experience, you're at the if you did that this year, you'd be at 61,730. Next year, whatever the general pay increase would be, if it's 1140 or whatever that is, that's on top of that salary. That's how you get the subsequent increases. So you're not there at that rate forever, is what I'm trying to say.
So the 35-year-old teacher at Rowe that we just recognized, he's probably one of our higher paid teachers then, he should be.
We have a teacher about, don't quote me on the number exactly, but it's either 84 or 86,000. They've been with the district that long. So you continue to climb every subsequent year at that general pay increase.
I'm sorry, I need to clarify that.
I'm glad you did, because I was
Yes.
going to circle back around, because what I was just hearing is that there isn't a cap then.
It's a cap when you first come in.
When you come into the
First come
district.
in, But I mean, I'm talking
It's
about
not
the,
a cap, it's a threshold.
Well-
I think if we word it
No, but a cap,
differently-
in my words, means that's it. You stop. You, even you.
That's
come
what
in
in-
our
saying.
business, there's a maximum that you can
There's a
That's what
possibly,
I'm saying.
and that's it.
It's more of a threshold than it is a cap, because you do have that opportunity, coming in 20 years, you are gonna get that increase the next year, whatever that general increase is.
So there is no cap.
No.
Okay.
That's the key.
There is and there isn't. Explains.
All right, let's go back to
So
Mr.
I'm looking
Miller.
at a TASB salary report for teachers this year. So different districts, there's 8 other districts besides ours. We have a max year's credit. So if you come to us with 20 years of experience, you're going to be at the 61,730 this year. Next year, whatever that pay increase is on top of that, and 22-year, 23-year, whatever. That's how we have teachers in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s salary range. Just for point of reference, and I won't mention the districts if that's okay, but and there's 8 of them, so they range from 35, 20, 23, 25, 20, 20, 25, and 25. And if I may go one step further, as I looked at these districts, as far as the gap from 0 to 20 years, or 0, I'm sorry, let me back up, from 0 to 20, sorry. Some of them go $12,000, 10, 12, 8, 10, 11, 9, 11. So our 10,000, if you will, if I may say, is right in that range of the thing.
that sheet that's 20?
I'm sorry?
Is there any in that sheet that's 20?
Yes, there's 1, 2, 3 others besides McAllen.
No,
What-
that are $20,000.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That
no,
matched the
no,
TEA slope.
no. So that's why I was wanting clarification, I don't mean to point, but is
No,
that,
no, it's
is that the
okay.
minimum salary
So
range, or
I'm
what?
looking at a spreadsheet that I did in August of 2019, and it has TEA MSS slope, and the difference is 20,880, and I have the TEA slope of 20,880. So it's old data, so the difference is actually probably more.
I want to say, if I may, I'd have to do some quick Google, I want minimum salary something, because TEA has a minimum, you gotta be at least this, and we beat that on every one
That
of
one's
our.
at 36.
That's at 36,
Yeah,
yeah.
36.
And,
Yeah,
and
we're-
the 20-year for that one is 54, the minimum.
Yeah.
But the slope has the 0 years back 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it's 49.1, and then the 20-year is 69.980.
That information is for most school districts in the state of Texas.
Right.
It's definitely not gonna be the larger school
Right.
districts of which we are. And most of the surrounding districts are considered large here in the metro area.
And just to be fair, I'm not gonna agree with the numbers. I understand what you're trying to do, because it's not coming from the state. You did a little bit of research on that. It could be wrong. So I don't wanna make it
get it
seem
right
like it's 20,000. I think we need to wait to see that. But either way, whatever the number is probably still a gap there. So, that's the point that you're getting at. And
Yeah.
I'll agree to that there's no doubt that there's a gap and we need to close it, so.
But Trustee Swatters brings up an excellent point, and that is figuring out a way, if the perception is that they're a 20-year plus is gonna be no different than a 9 or a 10-year staff. In other words, you're starting to compress again. Even though, from what I'm understanding, you are making some allowances and some moves. Maybe it's a stipend. That when you reach a certain point, you're entitled to get a stipend. That may make the most sense. And maybe we have a 20, 25, 30-year stipend. So when you hit that mark, there's no fudging. You as a staff would know in anticipation how many employees are making going to that. And you can already start budgeting and allowing, and it's known that those individuals, I think that may be it's a one-time deal and a more equitable way of how to ensure that those more tenured individuals receive that type of additional compensation. I don't know how anybody else thinks about that, but that may be the easiest way.
That's something to explore, you know, and hopefully that's something that the 20-plus or 21-plus teachers will embrace and say, you know, this is good and this is something in our favor, and they'll decide to stay or, you know, but it's something to explore. And, you know, you brought up the land earlier. Land is one of those things that is so valuable. We just don't go and sell them all out because they're sitting there and we're having to maintain them, especially the Crockett land. You know, that piece of land is, you know, pretty valuable because of where it sits and because McAllen is landlocked. you know? We've got no other place where we're gonna have that amount of land that we can utilize for a future project. So, you know, we have to explore those options, and we need to come up with a different option. If we can't afford to do that raise right now, but we can afford a stipend, then we need to look at that, you know? We need to make that effort to incentivize, or however you wanna call it, for those teachers that have been here that long. Even if a teacher has not been with McAllen ISD, but has been a teacher 20-plus years somewhere else and comes to McAllen ISD, what an asset, you know?
Totally agree.
What an asset to us, to the children, and so we need to find a way to help that situation.
Totally agree, but the only way is we gotta manage cost. And that's, we've been talking about that. Cost is cost, and we're not getting any more for anything we do. And so when a facility is no longer educating children and no plan to educate children, does it make sense, you know? And if it could be repurposed, totally agree. But if it can't, it's drawing from all the other programs and services and
So
staff to cover those costs.
So are a lot of other projects.
I totally agree. That was just one element of a whole lot of elements. And I didn't name names because it's water under the bridge. But the point of the matter is, we're not the only ones that have faced this.
No,
You know,
absolutely not.
every school district has had to either sell or consolidate multiple facilities to manage costs. And that's all I'm talking about, is we gotta get a handle on our cost, because we will never get out of the situation of paying our staff if we're carrying all this cost along with us.
Yeah, and then also bringing on big, huge projects that, you know, and other projects that we maintain already that could be streamlined out or somehow worked in a different favor.
Well, you know, if the ESSER fund had never happened, what would the school district have to do?
Absolutely.
And that's what we should be talking about and thinking about, and I brought it up several times, and nobody wants to talk about it, so that's where we are.
Okay, I'm going to give Trustee Elizalde the floor. She's been patiently waiting. Trustee?
Sorry,
I
trustee.
apologize, Trustee.
Not at all. Ms. Richards, if we stayed within that 3.48 million, and we tweaked the percentages between the 0 to 5 year teachers, the 6 to 12 years, the 13 to 19, the 20 plus, could you look and see wiggle room rise? You know, I like percentages. Could you do 3% for some, 1% for some, 1.5% for others?
We can certainly look at it. I think it's stretching it quite a bit, doing anything beyond that, because as we can see here, we kind of stayed within the 2. And even over here, because really the only difference we have on this scenario B is where we pulled out the school leadership and the central administration at scenario B, which only allowed us the $196,000 to work with. So I think if we do anything less, you're talking about a 1%, a 0.5%. I'm not really sure that really is providing our employees any type of substantial type of compensation at the different levels when we go anything maybe beyond. I mean, because I know I've heard y'all express the fact that there's rising costs, there's inflation, and I just feel that anything less than the 2%, you know, will help meet a little bit more needs than going down to a 0.5% or 1% or 1.5. So, you know,
Remind me
scaling
what
it
everybody
further
got
down.
for remind me the stipends that everybody got,
That-
5, everybody just got $5,000. I don't have a problem with giving some people 0 to 5 year teachers $500 and giving the 20 to up
Well,
teachers.
what we did on the scenario B is where we included all teachers. On scenario A was everybody, with giving everybody else a 0 increase on there. Again, our position is that we really feel that every member of this team, every member of the McAllen ISD team deserves some type of compensation recognition. But that is the scenario there if we were to go that route.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying that at this point in time, everybody just got $5,000 across the board. And if we want to do something differently for the different years of teachers' experience, if we want to go closer to that slope, the $20,000 difference versus the $10,000 difference, this would be the opportunity to do that. I mean, I've never thought that we should do the same percentage to everybody across the board. I always think we should tweak it. I just wondered what it would look like.
I think I don't think there'd be a lot of room there, because the max you'd probably go would be, the high end would be the 2, so you'd be working your way down to the
$500 for a
1.5,
zero
the
teacher,
1, the
3,000 for
$0.5%, right, and
But that's what I'm saying, is I don't have a problem giving $500 to a 0-year teacher and $3,000 to a 20-plus teacher. I just wonder what it would look like if you broke it up and kind of tweaked it, staying within those parameters, because I do think that all those projects that we have on the books are very worthy. I would hate to see any of those projects go by the wayside. If we stayed within that parameter, I just wonder what it could look like if you moved it around.
Sorry, Doc. I just I want to piggyback on what Ms. Halitiel says, and I think we're not far from where we need to be. There's 336 teachers that we need to focus on in terms of how can we put a smile on their face, right? And I think we're all in the same boat with paying people right and finding a creative way. But the inflation that a 20-year teacher has or 21-year teacher has is the same inflation that the 15 teacher has and the first-year teacher has. And the other thing we need to think about is, what incentive do we have for a high school student to go to college, get into debt $100,000, and to go make a $50,000 job, which he or she will spend the next 15 years paying off college debt. And so I think that, you know, and not that anyone's idea is bad, but I think we need to find a way to incentivize every year, incentivize a bonus for the 21-year plus teachers to make sure they don't leave us. And there's not an answer, Debbie. You're not right, you're not wrong, and I'm not wrong, and you're not right and I'm not right. Somewhere there has to be a gray area where we have to fix it, but I just hate to tell a certain group, you're not as important as this group, because, I mean, we're right. We have a lot of experience with the 20-year plus, but there's also a diamond that just started, a first-year teacher that's impacting, and we've seen it in our schools now, these you know, young, energetic teachers that chose this profession because they want to impact kids. And I don't want to tell them that they're any less important than anybody else. But, and not that I'm right, I'm just my point of view, but point well taken both ways. It's just a hard decision to make to alienate somebody.
And
Hang on, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Gonzalez. He's been patiently waiting.
No, I wanted to thank the board for this discussion. I think that obviously this is a very difficult decision. As I look across the audience, I see some of our great teachers here, and we do believe that every teacher, regardless of how many years you have, contributes to our team. And we've had many discussions about how we can make things equitable, even to the point where we start to look at core teachers. So if a teacher is in a core area, should they make more than an elective teacher? They're held to end-of-course exams, they're held to STAR exams, they're held to very high standards. So you look at algebra teachers, you look at biology teachers, you look at that. So we've even looked that far. But at the end of the day, we know that the elective teachers support the core. And we know that everybody, when you look at our Reteach and Enrich program and what we do before, during, and after school, every teacher, regardless of what they teach, is important. So one of the challenges that we have, and as we talk to people at the state level, is if they could fund us based on our enrollment and not ADA, as an example. We're one of 6 states in the entire nation that still funds on ADA, which makes it a challenge for us. If we were funded like the rest of the states, that would be a $6 million swing for us, so that we wouldn't have to make tough decisions. Because as I look at the list, if we talk about projects that we could take off the table, there's $12 million in black boxes that we haven't built, we haven't broken ground on. That's $12 million right there. Do I want to do that? Absolutely not. There's Quinta, but I believe that urban ecology, sustainability, recycling, and all that we're doing around that area with UTRGV and that outdoor learning space is going to be a golden opportunity for us, on top of the great relationship that we have with the city. And they've done a lot to help us, and we've done a lot to help them, and we have an agreement with them. So I would hate to go back on that agreement. And if we look at HVAC systems and everything that else that we need, I mean, they're really a necessity, but all that to say, we will go back and look. The UTRGV Collegiate Center on a medical school campus is one of its kind, and we believe that it's going to help draw. I know we talked about the PYP. I think the PYP at the elementary level for IB is a powerful program. It's something that expands our menu. So when people start to look at McAllen ISD, there are individuals that are interested in the PYP and that continuum to go to the MYP and ultimately our flagship diploma year program. So there's a lot of difficult decisions to make, and the 3.4 millions where we are in these difficult times coming out of the pandemic, anything more than that would be a recurring cost. So we really have to look at that deeper. So sounds interesting for stipends. I think that that's one, but to commit for year after year would be very, very difficult, especially going into the next budget season is going to be tough for us as well as our enrollment continues to decline. But all of these are great points that the administration will take into account. But I do want the teachers to know that we value you all, and we're doing our very best to provide the very best that we can, and we're trying to be as competitive with our local market. So we're not so much looking at markets in North Texas, we're looking at markets in our geographical area, in the Region 1 Service Center. Thank you, Mr. President.
And I've said it myself before, and part of my frustration is our fiscal year budget. I understand that by wrapping it up June 30th and starting July 1st, you know, that it assists us and it helps us. But I think that we come out of the gate so early, we set the bar and say, this is what we're paying teachers. The competitive forces around us come in and say, McAllen set the bar, now let's go here. And they'll just up us $1,000. And that's one of the things that I feel has prevented us from, you know, being able to do what we do. But it's unfortunate that, you know, I think every teacher here is greatly appreciated. If it hasn't been said enough, you know, it's one of those things. But the same way that we appreciate those 0 to 5, 5 to 10, you know, 20-plus year teachers, we appreciate everybody within the district. We appreciate the efforts that everybody's put forth. And it's one of those things that financially we're in a situation that we have to really watch what we do. Everybody's brought up great points as to let's divvy it up this way, let's divvy it up that way, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure and do what's fair and equitable across the board for everyone at McAllen ISD. Any other questions, Sophia?
Quick. So I think after this discussion and two really good points Dr. Gonzalez mentioned and Trustee Suarez is we need to maybe be a little more aggressive in our legislative approach and how we lobby and advocate for the way we're funded, one, and just in general, legislative advocacy so that school funding is more equitable. And so maybe that's an area that we need to look at being stronger at. We can sit here and try to divvy up funds all day, but if we're not getting the funding, you know, formulas changed or, you know, maybe we need to have a stronger legislative push and not just hope that, okay, we mention it, it's good. Let's go full force. Let's go after the legislators and say, hey, we really need this. You know, we're a strong voice. We're School District of the Year, right? HEB Excellence Award. We're a big voice. Let's use it.
Dr. Gonzalez?
Now, one thing I will say is I did have the opportunity to speak before the State Education Committee that reports directly to the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Speaker of the House, and this is the same committee that approved the hold harmless. So when I talked to them about ADA, when I talked to them about enrollment, and I talked to them about teacher pay, their response was, well, we were the committee that approved the hold harmless, so we're the same committee that can approve the enrollment and not ADA. But when it comes to teacher pay, that's local. That's a local effort. That's what I was told. And I'm saying that's fine and dandy. So if you base our funding on enrollment, imagine what we can do with $6 million a year. We can put that back into the hands of the staff, and that's sustainable year after year over time. So to your point, Trustee Peña, and to everybody else, it's really going to take some change at the state level when you start to see that we're one of 6 states in our great nation that still, we're on a short list of schools that are still basing enrollment on ADA. So I think that would really solve a bigger problem that we have. And on top of that, when you start to look at our competitors and what it is with regard to state funding that they receive and the state funding that we receive, the price is the same for everybody to build a school, but the cost is different because of the funding that we receive.
On the facility side.
Yeah.
You know, just so nobody misconstrues, come from a background, you put everything on the table and you start picking and choosing what you have to. We have to, again, look at beyond the ESSER. We have to. Yeah. We have to prioritize, and we have to get a facility plan that's current. We've already outpaced the facility plan we had before as to what it's going to look like and how we are going to go forward. We could have easily used bond money to get some of these facilities done just as quick as we use the ESSER funds. I don't like the word, something I don't like, but frankly, you know, it's been 17 years. And really some of these things had not been the ESSER, that's what we'd be talking about. And yet, we're not talking about it. And that's something that the community needs to hear the story of, we want this and we want that, we all want that. But how do we go about it together? And the way we go about it together, unfortunately, is through taxpayer money. And we're capped now on it when it comes to the tax rate, which sometimes gave us some latitude, but now that is taken away from us now. So there's not as much latitude, and we're definitely going to see a pinch in the next 2 years coming out of this. And so if we're going to really help the folks today and the folks tomorrow, more importantly this district, we have to have these type of, I'm not wanting to take anything off the table, but at the same time, in order to have conversations about what's the most important thing, the most important thing is a teacher in a classroom with a student, no doubt. And everybody else is in a support role, including us. And we take the pulse of the community, and everybody wants this and everybody wants that. We have to be candid with folks and say, this is what it's going to take, just like it did with the TRE. And so, you know, we're kind of going around and around, but the one point I want to make is that I've brought it up again, and that's there's 2 ways you can, under the statute, you cannot give bonuses. There's only 2 ways: stipends or holiday pay. That's the only way you can do it, aside from the salaries and compensation. So we're using a term, I think we all understand what it means, but from a public ed, as I understand it, those are the only 2 ways. I've already suggested that, and it could start at a slow level, maybe 300, 500, 600, and 900, just to see where we are going forward from a stipend standpoint, but also holiday pay. I had suggested the 500, taking the money we got from the HEB Education and Excellence Fund. I know it wasn't much, it's 100,000. That's about 25, 30. Put that into the mix. Maybe it can't be 500, maybe it's 300, maybe it's 200, I don't know. But I do think that the employee should have a holiday pay this coming year, I really do. So I think that needs to be put into the equation, and serious conversations about making that happen.
Thank you, trustee.
I just have a call to action. I'm sorry. So when I talked about putting on the agenda and possibly getting some help, I think that's the first thing we need to do is go after petition the state, having some type of media campaign. We have teachers unions out here that can help us, but it's not just here local. We got to reach other parts of the state and the right people, the education committee, that we can go talk to now and say, listen, move it to enrollment. And that would bring in $6 million that I heard you say that's recurring, that we can go back to teachers' pay. So that we need to do ASAP. We spend a little bit of money on that, that's fine. I think the other thing is, Dr. Gonzalez, when you talk about all the different ones, I think for our next workshop, what would help me is how much of land do we have that if we sold today would bring in? How much in IB, and I know you talked about it, but I want to, just know the money aside, because I know the other projects, Quinta's $4 million, UTRGV is $12 million. I don't know what IB Elementary, how much that cost us. And so I'd like to know that to kind of help me make some decisions, because we're talking about, funding all this and doing all that, but I don't know if there's any money to play with, and I'm just curious to see if those are it. Because the truth of the matter is, I think we missed the boat a little, and we have to be very truthful about it, we did all these projects, and they were good with ESSER funds, but if you look at this survey, and look at where our teachers and the rest of the staff said that they lost a little confidence in us, I think we didn't reserve money enough for them. And that's just the bottom line. And I have buyer's remorse. I voted for all of it. I'm admitting that for me, I made a mistake on that. It is what it is. I'm trying to clean it up, and it's not fair to you because we make commitments, and I understand commitments. But at the same time, if it's that low with our staff, then we need to really look at it. And that's and I hate to say it, but I keep bringing it up. Quinta is one of them. I mean, it's a lightning rod. So we have to make some tough decisions. We're gonna have to do it, and that's where I'm at right now. So I'm not trying to undermine you. You're the educational leader of the school district, and rightly so. And I have all confidence in you in doing that. But I'm just speaking for myself. That there's a lot of buyer remorse because I think we should have set a little bit more money aside for the people that got us through the pandemic. So.
We did set $5.5 million aside. That's what we're using for the raises.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, one thing, and and I see the point clear, but if you look at the $20 million we took off the top of ESSER, that was straight back to
Yeah,
the
you're
staff,
right,
right?
you're right. We did
Not,
spend money on
not,
teachers.
now,
You're absolutely
that
right.
$20 million. Now, the other thing is, our district was in desperate need of what we utilized ESSER for. And to Trustee Saliva's point, when I'm asked, how could other districts have put more money in the pockets of teachers? Because the districts that you're referencing have passed recent bonds. So the money that we're spending on black boxes and the money that we're spending to refurbish our fields and the money that we're spending to do our press box and the money that we're spending, all of that we repurpose ESSER for, they're using out of bond money. So they're able to take ESSER and put it back into the hands. But that takes community effort, and that takes everybody coming together, right, to move. So it's kind of apples and oranges when you start to, so I don't have remorse on anything we did with ESSER, because in the space and time and based on our current reality, that's not the same current reality of districts around us or in the northern states, we needed the black boxes. Our theater program's suffering, and when we have tremendous mariachis, 7-time state champs on top of memorials coming up and Rose coming up and all the wonderful things going on in theater, the Palm Awards, it was like all these awards that we won. And you start to look at Mariachi Oro and 7 state championships out of a portable building. And you start to look at, we're the only school district that doesn't have baseball and softball at the middle school, but yet rolls way off into the playoffs. They're doing, you start to look at our kids. So I have no regret on what we did with any of it. The challenge now becomes is how do we get the state to understand the challenges that we have so that districts like ours can generate that 6 million? Because if we can give a 2% with the 3.4, then we can give closer to 4% with 6. Right, so that's the, and over time. So that's something that we need to consider. But I mean, to the community, just know that we're doing the very best that we can with the resources that we have. And at some point in the near future, we're going to have a serious conversation about our commitment as a community and what we want to do with our district. But we can't keep playing with the same pennies that we have right now. And I'll just leave it at that.
And we talk about the accomplishments that we've had in the last 7 years and the money that we've reinvested, whether it be through the TRE, whether it be through different, perspectives, and we've brought a lot of the facilities up. I mean, if you look at the theater programs at each one of the schools, when I got on the board, Mac High Auditorium was the same one that it was in 1990 when I was competing at UIL events there. So we have made some significant improvements, and we're at a point where we've got to decide, and it's going to be a big question for us. But
Well, just along those same lines, just because I just wanted to make, I wanted to be, hey, it's a workshop. It is what it is. We're
Workshop, we're not on either.
I have one more thing to say,
Yeah,
too.
it is what it is. Because I like what you said, Dr. Gonzalez, and I echo all that. I mean, our fine arts needed it, so I support it. But I think what my point when I said there's buyer remorse, and I'm being very specific, is that looking at all the projects and you prioritize them. For me, the Quinta, because of what happened with it, is at the bottom. And we're in this situation right now. I'm not advocating that we, not fund the fine arts, what have you. But if we're talking tough decisions right now and trying to pay our teachers, that's the only portion I'm trying to say. I understand there's value in Quinta, and I understand all those. I really do. But at the same time, there's value in our teachers as well. So it's not. I don't want to make it seem, because I know it was said earlier when I said something that it's for the kids. I totally understand.
Yes, sir.
All of us up here for the kids. I would never make that comment, but there is some tough decisions. That's the only thing I want
Yes,
to
sir.
echo. We don't need to defend what we've done the last 7 years. I think we've done a lot with what we can. But to Trustee Sandoval's point and to everything else and yours and all that, moving forward, I just don't want to sit here again next year and say, well, our budget's tight, our penny's tight. I think, and I have one more year on the school board, I want to go out knowing that we're super aggressive.
Yes,
what
sir.
are we going to do, with the legislator? What are we going to do looking at every project? I'm not saying I'll vote for, IB or even the Quinta. I'm just saying that it's on the table for me right now. And so we can figure something out. And if we can't figure it out, from my end, it is what it is, we move forward. But we can't tell the teachers and our staff anymore, well, it's out of our hands. They know, we know. But we got to do something different. And if it's a bond to free up some money, I mean, I don't want to even say the word bond right now because I know families are struggling, and I get that. But I understand where you're coming from, Sam. I mean, at some point we just you know, we gotta make this, and it's not about,
I've been patient.
expense fine arts or anything like that, because I value every single one of our programs, so I'll defer to you, Trustee.
Yes, sir.
And so, yeah, I have, I already said it, but if we're the innovators, we're the leaders, I challenge you, challenge the community to support the effort to, let's rally the troops and let's get the other districts involved through your network of superintendents, through Region 1, and let's go after the legislators. And let's say, you know what, as a collective, because yeah, they had money through bonds that they were able to use, that the community supported them through, and then they used the ESSER funds directly for other stuff. We didn't have that luxury. So lead the, lead the way and advocate. I'm going to lose my voice.
Thanks for being so
That
emotional.
means- that means I need to cut.
Wow.
That means I need to be quiet.
Still getting strong, Tony.
No, it's unfortunate.
Lead the way.
Yes,
Lead
ma'am.
the way, Doc.
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
go aggressive in the community, support that effort, and let's go after the legislature and bring all the other superintendents with you and do it.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, the reality is, the way it works is that the Board of Trustees has to, and it's open right now, and there's school boards all across the state that are preparing a advocacy agenda item. And so we need to do that. If that's the case, then we need to write, there's a form we have to fill out, there's a process. I think the deadline's coming up on the 9th of June, and if that's a position that this board wants to advocate for, then we should put that on the agenda and prepare the, it doesn't have to be real sophisticated, very lengthy. And then it just so happens Trustee Peña is on the Region 1 Legislative Advisory Council, and there's about 150 people throughout the state that will be meeting between now and September to come up with the agenda for TASB and TASA to go to the legislatures next year. Then this is one that we have to put on there. If we don't put it in writing, it doesn't happen. It's
Right.
just talk. And so we got to do that. And so I'm willing to work with whoever's here on the board to help come up with that language to get it on there. Let's not assume every other boards are actually doing that as well. They may not be. But if we all are, then that's a lot more advocacy you're going to get. The other is, I just want to make clear, I'm just bringing into the equation of conversations, as Trustee Alvarado and Trustee Ali said, and everyone here has mentioned, that we're not in this situation year after year after year after year. And we can find fault and we can find blame, but at the end of the day, we're making a lot of decisions, and we need to be looking at a much broader, longer range about how that has an impact on our staff. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, you know, I don't want, you know, somebody's call me tonight and text me, it's Sam's against IB, and I'm not against IB.
Or for a bond.
Or for a bond. I'm just saying that the reality, these are funding mechanisms that are allowed to us, and the TRE is no longer in the equation for us as it once was. And the maintenance tax note, we are capped out. We cannot go out for any other maintenance tax note. So we're now very, very limited. We cannot raise the local tax rate any more than 2% at any given time, so that's capped. So, and the state is going to do what the state's going to do. We had a House Bill 3. We thought that was the answer to end all, and here we are, you know?
Yes, sir.
And so my concern, the last thing I want to say, if we're going to go for this point, I think we ought to, where we look at maintenance, membership and not ADA, that whatever funds are generated from that must go to compensation, cannot be used by a district to fund anything else. Otherwise, we're back into the same situation.
No, and I think that's part of it.
Yes, sir. That would be it. Now, another thing, if I may, sir, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Mr.
sir, you're
President.
good,
I just
you're
wanted,
good.
I
You're
just
good.
really wanted, I didn't want to leave and think about this at home. Cindy, we'll pay off all our bonds in what year?
2030.
2030. So if you think about 2030, that's right around the corner. So that tells you that this district is extremely healthy when it comes to our bond debt. So we're in a position where in the near future, we will have to come together and we will have to make a tough decision and a commitment as a community for the betterment of our children. And that's going to take sacrifice on everybody's behalf in the future whenever it comes. But if you start to look at the horizon and paying off our bonds in 2030, the time is coming.
Trustee Ellison.
I mean, I think it's wonderful to talk about legislature and all that, but that's in the future. Right now, today,
Today.
all we should be discussing is the 3.48, because it is a reoccurring cost. We can't take it out of it. So let's focus, and let's talk about what we can do with the 3.48.
Mr. Miller, next slide, please.
Those were
there's a
the
whole
slides we
nother-
had.
I was gonna say, there's all this.
Yes, but we can go back and, as we're looking at this, I think we are looking at a situation, possibly, something for us to consider is again the retention type stipends that we talked about, because that would not be recurring. Certainly as we go through this process, we could consider something that we did when we worked with the ESSER funds. That was a stipend based on the availability of fund balance, and we can certainly have that as something for us to look at administratively as we move forward.
How much for holiday pay?
Well, it would just depend on how much we're looking at. Are we, we're looking at $500? Are we looking at providing this for all staff members? Are we just
Everybody.
looking at the 20-year plus?
Everybody.
If you're looking at $500 for all employees, that's probably close to $2 million, 1.8, 1.9, with the fringe benefits that we have to pay on that, or a little less, probably a little less, kind of close to 1.8 on there. But, that's certainly something that can be considered as we move forward, and speaking with Mr. Miller in terms of a possible resolution to that effect, because I know that when we did the ESSERs, it was based on funding availability and fund balance and stuff like that, and we could tie it into that. And you have that picture a little better, a view of that picture once we close out the year and stuff. But certainly the settlement has helped us, place us in a much better position. The adjustment up to our operational minutes adjustment by TEA has helped us. So, there was a point during this year where we felt like we were gonna end up with a net loss.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now, because of the settlement and because of the operational minute adjustment, we're looking at a positive net income ending the year. So there's a possibility of repurposing that net income, assigning it, and looking at possibly some type of a retention stipend at whatever point in time that the board determines. And again, with different recommendations, it could be for all staff or the group the trustees are interested in. But right now, just a quick calculation of 500 for about 3,300 employees, plus the fringe benefits, probably about 1.8 million.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, when we do the compensation document that are we putting the stipend in there as well? Because when we're having these conversations about salaries and benefits, many of our folks are getting stipends as well. And so, are those being factored in? And when you mentioned you were going to give some document to every employee as to their full compensation package, is stipends for the individual going to be reflected in that as well?
That's the challenge we're facing right now, because some are supplemental and some are in the system. So we're trying to figure out how we can get those supplemental ones that are submitted by paper to HR. How do we make sure we include those? So that's one of our, probably one last remaining hurdles that we're trying to figure out how to do that, so.
And just one last thing, I apologize on the comment I may have made regarding the cap.
Oh.
My misunderstanding on the cap. So now I understand it, so.
Oh, that's
I'm in
fine.
place, but I appreciate you, and my apologies.
No offense.
I'm sorry, just before we go to the next slide, in the teacher librarian, the 2%, the dollar amount, does that mean everybody's gonna get that dollar amount, or is it
On scenario 8?
on all the scenarios? In all the scenarios, we have a dollar amount. I know with the other staff, it's percent of midpoint.
Right, that
but
would be,
I'm sorry,
yes, for teachers, librarians, it would be that dollar
the
amount.
dollar amount.
The dollar amount, not the percent. It's
Right,
equivalent,
right.
but it is a dollar amount for them.
It's-
because
So
they're
a
just
20-year
different
teacher
pay.
versus a 0-year teacher, the dollar amount that's being recommended is the 1,140, right?
Well, administration's recommendation is still the 1,140.
Right.
The scenario A with no compensation for other staff, it would be 1,980. And again, as Mr. Miller mentioned, the teacher, the in-house teacher we have, a teacher that's part of our employees, part of our staff right now, that has 21 years, 22 years, 23 years, they actually receive this increase. They don't have that cap we were talking about.
Right.
He was strictly talking about a new teacher into the district. We can start you off at that 61,000. But once you're here, second year, you get the raise like everybody else. And if you've been with us, once you hit your 20 years, your 25th year, your 28th year, you've been receiving these raises. So the gap between that, I think you mentioned it was 70,000 that you saw in that TA report, and what Mr. Miller mentioned, that probably isn't the true gap, because that's an entry-level 20-year teacher to our district, not necessarily probably what the average is for our teachers that have been here and have been receiving these compensation increases with every other staff member year after year after year. So I think it's reasonable to say that a teacher who's been with us 25, 28 years we know they have been receiving these incremental increases that have been board approved on an annual basis. So we don't have our in-house teachers capped. It's strictly an entry-level person. That's their entry into our system.
So as long as we keep making adjustments to salaries and the like, unless we make a different decision, but right under the current practice and policies, they'd be receiving that amount and added to it, so they're incrementally, their salaries continue to grow, and there is a continued spread between a starting and a 30-year teacher.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, just for clarification purposes, if you would explain that the midpoint for teachers is based on the median market value. That's the way we develop the midpoint. Since teachers don't have a midpoint, we took the median market value, created that midpoint, and that's where we multiply the percentage by that.
And that's to give the board an idea of where it stands in relation to what we may be doing with other staff. And you can kind of see this over here. You can see here that medium then with 3.5% versus the 2% we're getting at, just to give you an idea. Sometimes y'all like to see kind of a comparable percentage to that.
On the first slide, when you have the GPI, then you have adjustments, estimated fringes. The fringes is health insurance and benefits, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's the adjustment, the 881,000?
The GPI is your base.
Yeah, right, that's the base, and then, let me see, I'm so sorry.
Adjustments are any equity adjustment. I guess I should have you speak to those, but those should be the TASBO recommended equity adjustments and compression issues.
Right, that's exactly right. So that's the equity adjustment. So if you look at the, I think this year works out to 1 year through 19, if not all, most of those levels, if you will, we'll get equity adjustments to help the decompression, to help, because right now they're kind of compressed. So right at TASB says we need to decompress, we need to stretch those out a little bit. So that's the adjustments that you see referenced are for 883,000 for the general fund.
So now I'm confused. So if I'm a 10-year teacher, I'm gonna get the 1140 plus,
Right, whatever equity adjustment that TASB deems that is needed to decompress those from the 9-year and also from the 11-year. Otherwise, you'd have everybody kind of sandwiched together. You think, like the 10 years, it'd be really compressed.
Yeah, we've been talking about salaries, but there's another component which you're now touching on, and that's the decompression part.
Trying to stretch those out.
Many teachers are gonna not only see the raise, the amount we saw a while ago, they're gonna see an additional amount because of the decompression. And it's gonna vary where they are in that salary range.
That's exactly
as to
right.
what that compression amount will be.
Right. And the beauty of that is I think it's the beauty of it, TASB does that. So it's not like anybody here at McAllen ISD says, oh, I want this group to have more or less. It's a TASB analysis.
and that TASB analysis, it's just 0 through 19-year teachers, or is 20-year teachers on?
Well, zero, actually, technically, I'm sorry, 0 to 20, because that's what I hate to say cap, but we cap our teachers, it's max year credits. It's more based on service credit at 20. If you go beyond 20, as I said, you still get the 1140 rate. So from an equity adjustment, they look at that 0 to 20 for equity adjustments.
Is there a reason why we're doing it at 20 and not leaving it open throughout?
I know that if we look at a school district like Edinburgh, they're at 35, right? Is that right, Todd?
Edinburgh's, I'm sorry, at 23. Those
Who was at 35?
Brownsville.
Brownsville. So there's different districts that set the threshold at different areas. It's just the higher the threshold, the more expense.
Can I show this slide?
And I understand that, but I mean, if we're gonna stay, we've spent a lot of time, but now we're where the rubber meets the road, and we gotta have some, so there is a cap in the sense of the equity adjustment. That's where for lack of a better word, is cap. In other words, they're not looking at any different adjustment in the range of within the fair market, is that the term you used? Beyond the 20-year employee at McAllen ISD.
That's fair for TASB, yes.
That's fair for that, and that is at our direction.
Yes,
It's not TASB arbitrarily saying it's 20 for McAllen ISD, it's 35 for Brownsville and 30 for Edinburgh. We made the decision that it's gonna be 20.
At some point in the.
I know, I'm
process, yes.
not saying Todd did it,
It was you.
admit it.
May I show a slide that maybe
Fess
brings,
up to it.
may I show a slide that might bring
Yes,
some clarity to
please.
this right here?
Are we getting where we need to go?
So we showed this on May 18th, so this will hopefully bring, this assuming the 2%, right? So assuming 1,140 minimum increase for current staff, a zero-year teacher will start out at 52,150. We have teachers with this 2% increase, if approved, that will be earning $84,192. So that shows you as you go on in the subsequent years, that GPI, if you will, just keeps adding on top of that. If you're new to the district, minimum hiring placement, zero-year teacher, of course, will be 52,150. The 20-year max years credit would bring you in at 62,070. Does that help bring some clarity? So I don't want people to think that you're capped at 62 and you'll never earn more than 62,000 in McAllen. It's not, by far not true.
It's for new hires.
That's for new hires, exactly, sir. And there was a couple meetings ago where I showed about 33 or 34%, something like that, of new teachers coming into the district were double-digit years of experience. So we're still attracting that group, that experience level too.
What's our average?
14 years.
Yeah, it's a good average.
So. And
And
again,
that compared to our surrounding district is significantly higher.
you're reading my mind.
As far as tenure.
So as I'm looking across these same 8 districts, it's 14.4, 12.2, 12.8, 14.3, 13.9, 13.1, 12.2, and 17.2. So at our 14, we're leading over 3 or 4, at least 3 or 4 of those districts.
But it's not the way it was compared to 10 years ago. Everybody's kind of staying in place now and has been for some period of time.
If I may, yes and no, because we're still attracting people with double-digit years of experience. Right, we're still getting people in the 17, 20, 21, and you think, this is me speaking, at that point in your career, you're probably well-established, but why are they coming to McAllen? It's not because of the pay, it's.
Yeah,
That
but those are the, and in fairness, but those are the outliers. But getting back to this, just to be clear, if you come in as a new teacher, you're gonna be using the 20-year as a guide for bringing them in at a salary at a starting level.
Yes, sir.
That's correct. Now, what are we doing, or can we do anything different for those that have been with us longer than that to make sure we decompress the 20-year plus? Can there be 2 different approaches, or does it have to be one?
Now, TASB doesn't recommend anything. I really liked your stipend suggestion, but we'd have to figure out a way of, we can fix that into the, fit that into the budget. Because that's, you're talking about an incentive for retention, it's perfect. Be it at 25, 30, whatever that is.
I would do it in 5-year increments. That was my experience from my employer. So,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Okay. Good discussion. Any parting shots? All right, so let's move on to item 3, the discussion of the 2022-2023 budget, review of departmental budgets submitted by Dr. Gonzalez. Take it away, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. TA and Board Policy CE require districts to prepare a budget of anticipated expenditures and revenues before June 19th and approved by the board by June 30th. Ms. Cindy Medrano Richards, our Assistant Superintendent for Business Operations, will present the 5th budget workshop for the 2022-2023 budget, and this item is for information purposes only. Ms. Richards.
Dr. Gonzalez, Mr. Miller still had the stipend presentation?
Oh.
You want to continue?
Yes. I'll make it real quick if I may.
We'll go back to item 4 in the stipend presentation.
Sorry about that, Todd.
That's okay, sir, because we did a handout. Okay, so I handed everybody one of these packages right before the meeting started. So we discussed this the other day, I think last week. We went back and reevaluated, and based and appreciate the board's comments on that and the feedback. But we went back and looked at each of these stipends, and I'm gonna flip to athletics, if I may. And what was, after further consideration, we did remove, bear with me for a minute, the football varsity assistants, 6 additional coaches, and also the 6, second sport for football varsity assistants. A little further consideration. So that was the only change, honestly, out of this whole package. And I think we went through about half, and we got stuck, if you will, on athletics. Was there any other questions on any of the other stipend areas?
I really didn't, well, and I don't want to seem like I'm always bashing athletics, because I'm not, I'm just using it as a comparison. So if you look at basketball, excuse me, you have a freshman light, a freshman dark. You have coaches for both those. If you have a JV light, a JV dark, 2 coaches for both those. You have a varsity. And I think that's fantastic. I'm not saying to take anything away from that. But then if you look at theater, you don't have a freshman squad. You don't have a freshman light or a dark. You don't have a junior varsity light or dark. All you have is varsity. Also, if you look at the amount of days that a theater teacher is on contract with, it's just the 187. But all their UIL activities are done after school and on the weekends. They teach their class load in the daytime. The teachers that are considered the theater directors have a full load of, they teach, prose, poetry, debate, filmmaking, all sorts of things. Their musical theater and their theater production is done 100% after school. You can't take a class like you can take a basketball class in the middle of the day. You can't do that for theater arts. And so what I would like to see is the theater directors get the 15 days that all the other coaches are getting, and all the, in choir, in mariachi, in all the athletics, they're getting these 15 extra days, because we realize that their activities are done after school and on the weekends and in the summertime. But that same reality is the same reality for theater arts. I'd also like to see that the theater arts program gets 2 assistant two assistant theater directors. Rowe has 2, McAllen does not, and Memorial does not. They're gonna have to close like 6 sections at McAllen if we don't hire another teacher. And I don't think we're gonna attract another teacher unless we pay them like we pay the coaches. And imagine like my daughter, for example, a freshman, there's no way she could compete because there isn't a freshman theater group. But if we had another theater director, they could have a freshman theater group, co-ed, they could have a junior varsity, like PSJ. PSJ they compete UIL and all these other things, just like we do in sports. And so I would request that we look at our theater department, we add the 15 days that all the other people have, including mariachi, band, choir, it's not just athletics, it's the dance team. We give the theater department those 15 extra days, and give them, the campuses that only have 1 assistant, give them 2. So I'd like to see that raised from 4 to 6. Those are my thoughts.
What's the total of that?
The stipends?
Right.
It's not much.
Mr. President, if I may?
Yes, sir.
I did want Ms. Thomas, or Ms. Loya, just to clarify some of what we do during the day, because we do have access to teaching theater during the day, and our theater teachers are not teaching prose and poetry. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarify what the load is.
No, I'm sorry.
Hi. First of all, they are offered stipends for prose and poetry. I don't think that our theater teachers are doing debate. However, I think what Ms. Aliceda is referring to is the after-school productions. And so the after-school productions are above and beyond. And that is a difficult task. A lot of our directors do stay there until 7, 8 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock at night. Our production classes are Theater 1 level classes, Theater 2 level classes, 3 and 4. We also have technical theater that is run throughout the day, where they're teaching the actual foundation of theater and then moving up through that. A lot of the productions, though, have to be met after school, because a lot of the kids that make the roles are from outside of the theater arts classrooms.
Trustee Alvarado,
On the road, just.
can you speak into the mic, sir?
No, it's because I'm eating, I need you to hear me chewing. At Rowe, is there 1 theater or 2?
There are 2 additional theater directors at Rowe, equaling to 3 directors.
Okay. Are their numbers different than McAllen?
Yes, they are.
Higher or lower?
Higher.
The reason, though, is because that at McAllen, they offer KMAC, and they offer different electives. They have the CTE, they have all sorts of different courses that they don't have at Rowe. So you have kids looking for an elective, and they go into the program at Rowe. But you don't have the open sections at Mac High, so it skews it. Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say it's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges.
Well, and I guess I was going to it, just because I thought the row were the choir directors that would help it, because they do choir, play, so I thought it was just one person, but anyway. I think where I was trying to go with that, and I was surprised that Rowe was higher, because what I'd like to see, if there is a need at McAllen where kids are rolling and they're not, then I probably should be looking at Dr. Gonzalez, because I can't be telling your staff, it shouldn't be telling your staff, then we probably should be doing it, because I'm always for sports and all that, we want to have equal numbers, but the more I thought about it after we left, if there's a higher demand at a school, like the mariachi at McAllen, for example, there's a higher need there than the other ones, then you give them more. If there's a higher football players at Memorial and they need more coaches, then give them another coach. I think we try to be fair across the board, but at the same time too, if there's a program at McAllen, and there's a need for it, and we don't want to turn students around, I'm okay with that as well too. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm trying to.
Well, like McAllen Mariachis, they have 100 students, they have 2 teachers, and both teachers get a stipend, and they get 15 days.
I see what you're saying.
I mean, in choir, same thing. I mean, it's not just athletics that gets the 15 days, all the programs in fine arts.
You're just trying to bring them up to
I'm
everybody else.
just trying to bring them up to
That's
everybody
fine.
else.
I kind of
I'm
agree
with
with
you
that.
on that.
But how much is that? If she were to do that, how many, what are we looking at? 2,000, is it new position or just?
assistant
a-
15 days, it would be 15 days. I don't have that information.
Depending on the
$278 a
daily
day
rate.
times 15. Yeah.
4,050 times, you want 1 or 2?
We need 2 more,
2 more, so 2 per school, so it's 6. So you're looking at
just 2 more.
25.
No, just 2
But-
more.
Oh,
But
just
it would be 2 more salaried employees that would be added to the, and I do want to be fair, Rowe has 400 in numbers, Mac High has in the 200s, and so does Memorial. And Memorial and Mac High differ by 10 students.
I think McAllen is 270.
And I believe that Memorial, I think it's 267, and then I think it's 9 lower in Memorial.
Right. Versus Mariachi has 100, and they have 2 directors and 15 days. Versus choir that has 200, and they have 3 directors and 15 days each. All I'm saying is, don't take anything away from anybody else, but bring up that one. I mean, if you look at it, it's just kind of a red herring. It's the one thing, if you go through all the extra days everybody has, they're the one that are they're only paid for 187 days. They're not paid for, and then, if you're let's say you're an assistant football coach and you get 15 days, and then you're a basketball coach for the JV, do you get another 15 days, or is that capped out? It's capped out, right? That's what I thought.
Other stipend though for the basketball.
Right,
Well, they do both. They coach the varsity and they do.
right.
So they have
But-
to go to 2 practices.
But, so theater
But
doesn't,
they
you have
only
one, you have varsity. You have no junior varsity, you have no freshman squad, just like in Sure you have all that. So that's,
But I think that's the unfortunate reality between theater and athletics. In theater, you have to audition, and you're going to get that rejection. When it comes to athletics, all right, you're not varsity, you're not JV, we're going to put you on freshman and let you work your way up.
right.
So in theater, I mean, if you don't make that production, you're still a theater student.
No,
Yes.
no.
How many theater classes are
Is there
offered?
a freshman theater class?
There's a Theater 1 course, but it's not necessarily a freshman team.
Is it competitive? Is it, you're ready for UIL competition? No, but that's where you develop, just like as you would on a freshman team.
Correct.
It's a fundamental by taking that class.
Yeah.
I'd like to just make an observation, and Ms. Loya, you would be a brilliant expert witness with your very stoic answers, and so the award goes to her today. So come pick this up before you sit back down.
The only thing, Mr. President.
Very good.
Probably on slippery slopes, and I've been on it all day, but we're probably a little bit on. I think the point was taken, and they heard it, we should probably move on, because now we're getting close to governance.
Agreed.
And I apologize, she made her comment, and we should have left it at that.
Mr. Miller? Trustee Sullivan?
Yeah, just a quick comment that I did see a move in the middle schools on the theater arts director and that, and I think that's a real positive move in that direction. But one question I was gonna ask is, I noticed we did away, because of a grant of master teacher recruitment and grant managers, the funding just disappeared, or did we now absorb it somewhere else? This is on page.
That's under Project Rise, sir?
It's at the very top, it says grant-funded stipends, Project Rise. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Project Rise is no longer exists.
So whatever Project Rise was doing for the district, has that now been absorbed as a part of our business practice, or just gone? It's okay, we don't know the
I
answer.
don't know from the
It was a
instructional center.
grant,
Okay.
yeah.
And
it
so
was
when you
just-
get a grant, the whole idea is it's supposed to be a catalyst for a need. And the hope is it's seed money to then be able to absorb it within your
And
normal
we do,
business.
we do.
Did we absorb it somewhere?
Basically, what Project Rice was giving, it was extra time for teachers to plan, and we've gone district-wide with that
Okay.
model.
So it served its purpose, the money's
Yes.
run out, so we don't need it. Just in general, how many master teachers do we have, if any, in the district?
I don't know.
That's okay,
can find
if we could find that out. And then the other, I'd be interested in knowing how they got qualified, and how are they utilized. The other is, when looking at the stipends, I noticed that, and this, I thought this was a really good idea that Mrs. Benavides had brought forward. And this is dealing with training in the transportation area, that if they would take certain courses of study, there was an incentive to become more proficient in different mechanical components. They would get $150 each time they took a class, and I noticed we're taking that out. Is it, we didn't get enough participation, we didn't agree with the program, or are we gonna do a different thing?
And the current director wanted to get rid of those stipends. I don't think there was participation to the expected results.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you.
Did you just say
Thank you, trustee.
there was not enough participation?
Right, for those stipends.
Do we know, was there a reason for that, or they just not, did they not have enough time in the day, or was there any kind of a?
I don't know, I can find out.
I'd like to know why the participation was low, and you've got an opportunity to, one, hone in some new skills or sharpen old skills, but, and training is available, so why would the participation be low? If you could just, for future reference, or.
Got it. Thank you.
I thought it was a good idea.
Any further questions on the stipends? Thank you,
That's
Mr.
all I
Miller.
have, sir.
All right. Now moving back to item number 3, discussion of the 2022-2023 budget. Mrs. Richards, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Farina. I was gonna say today, but I think we're now closer to tonight. Tonight.
Should we be ordering tacos?
No, that's fine, we're good and we're ready to go. Tonight we'll be presenting a review of department budgets for the following 6 divisions. It's superintendent, instructional leadership, instructional services, human resources, district operations, and business operations. And at this point, we've already addressed the updates that we had from $6.50 per employee per month employer contribution increase to the employees' health insurance fund. 7, beginning next fiscal year, the 2022-23 school year, we're going to be required to record those more in line as with a capital lease. So some of the budgets you're going to be seeing tonight, you're going to see that we're pulling out that budget, placing it in a debt service fund type of a budget, so that then we make payments for our lease copiers in that way, and we'll be compliant with this particular statement that is effective beginning the new school year. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. As I mentioned, I am going to go over the 7 departments, the Board of Trustees departmental budget, the budget for the superintendent's office, internal audit, we've got community information, fine arts, athletics, and the police department that we will be discussing tonight. And I'm going to begin with the superintendent's budget. The superintendent's budget last year, the original budget that was board approved for July 1st, began with a budget of $747,348. The proposed budget for this coming year, 2022-23, is $762,767, and that's an increase of $15,419. And again, some of that is, you're seeing that in the payroll category. That has to do with the 2% pay increase, the increase in the health insurance, the employer's contribution increase on there. And again, it also includes the superintendent's contract renewal, which was negotiated back in the fall. In addition to that, what you're seeing there is the reduction of $3,059. That again has to do with our copier leases. That budget is being moved from this particular department into a debt service budget that we've created, and then we'll be paying out those leases from that particular line item, again, so that we remain compliant with the GASB 87 statement that's effective for next school year. The next item, the next budget I have is that of the Board of Trustees. The original budget for 21-22 was $90,449. The proposed budget for 2022-23 is $92,965, and that is an increase of $2,516. Again, that all has to do with the compensation category on there. Moving on. We've got the community information budget. The original budget for 2021-22 was $1,250,459. The proposed budget for 22-23 is $1,237,627. There have been a few little changes that are incorporated in this particular budget. As you notice, the payroll cost looks like it's decreased. We've had a net savings of about $46,000 in there. There were some positions that were vacated during the year and were not replaced. It was a webmaster position and a community information specialist, which helped bring down some of the cost within that department. We did add an assistant director for that department. The budget also includes, again, the 2% pay increase for the department staff and the health insurance on there. And as a result of all those factors coming in, it still resulted in savings for the department of almost $46,000 in there. The other thing that we're going to see in here is that we made a change this year in terms of who's overseeing special events. Those events are items like the teacher retirement banquet, the Partners in Excellence type of banquets. Those had been previously, those efforts had been led by Human Resources. Those functions are now being transferred to Community Information Department. So that particular budget was transferred from the HR budget into the Community Information budget. So it increased their budget slightly in order to accommodate for that change in leadership in spearheading those type of events for the district. And there was a slight increase to those because of the rising cost to hold these events. So a little adjustment there because of inflationary reasons. So that's the bulk of what happened there. And again, like most of our departments, the copier lease budget was transferred out to the other debt service budget, and that resulted in a decrease of, overall budget decrease of $12,832. The next budget we have is that for the internal audit department. Last year's original budget was $305,147. This year, the proposed budget for 2022-2023 is $250,932, and that's a net decrease or savings of $54,215. Now, that is also a position that was not replaced for their department, a data analyst position that was not replaced as it was vacated. In addition to that, the department did purchase some new audit management software they're utilizing this year, so that was additional cost to implement that particular software for the department. And from what I'm hearing from the group, they're very, very pleased with the way that software is going to help them as they move forward conducting their internal audits for the district.
Ms. Richards,
Yes,
is that software application, that was recommended by staff to be utilized by the internal auditor? Is that correct?
The internal audit department themselves made the determination of the software they're going to select after, doing their due diligence in reviewing what type of software was available to provide these type of capabilities.
You
for
know,
their
we're
audit
utilizing the full potential of that software.
They have started, they've actually implemented this year. I think we have Ms. Stephanie here. They did implement the software this year. It's still not at a full-fledged rollout yet, but they have already started the initial implementation of that software, and they're very happy with it. But it's not yet fully being utilized. It'll probably take, they received it this year, so it's off the ground. They have started working with it. But they'll be working on developing a little bit more and taking advantage of a little bit more of the features that are available this coming year.
Okay, because the concern I had, Dr. Gonzalez, is that the internal auditor is an extension of the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees has the responsibility of oversight of the district, including its finances. And so having access, direct access to raw data, not actual access to the software and the like, but this apparently shadows that and extrapolates it from the district. So we're not looking directly into the software, is my understanding. That's how this Bokiva works.
I would not be able to answer that, but we do have Ms. Garcia, our internal auditor, here, if you'd like her to step up to the podium and
No,
address
but
that.
I think I'm on general
Okay.
terms
Okay.
along the lines. The point I'm trying to make is we just need to make sure, I think, from the Board of Trustees standpoint, is that we have access to financial information that we need to see and be aware of what the district's actually doing for the best interests of you and the district, and more importantly, the community and this trustee board.
Yes, sir.
Before you move forward, I just want to also commend the move, taking special events from HR and giving it to community engagement. I think that they have done an amazing job of taking care of these events and promoting them and letting the community know, and it's just, y'all have so much to do, and they, good job.
Thank you.
I love it, good job.
Now, let's not give Mr. Berry an ego there.
He already has one. I'm sorry, I said that out loud.
Sorry, Jacob. I apologize for the boys.
Okay, moving on. The next department that we're going to discuss is the police department. The police department actually has two funding sources. One is a local funding source, which is their departmental budget, and the other one is their state funding source. So if you look at the budgets, underneath the green bars, those are the separate local funding budget and the state funding budget. And if you look at that blue, it's a recap of both of those together. But I'm going to speak to them individually. The blue's just a recap of both of them. So when I'm looking at those individually, they do have a state budget on there, their local budget on there. Its original budget last year was $3,934,178, and this year it's $4,083,360 is the proposed budget for 2022-23, which is an increase of $149,182. There are some adjustments we're making. Of course, we do have the straight 2% increase on there for their department staff. But what we also have in there is that they have a report management system for next year, and the contract will end in November. So we needed to add some additional funding for them for their maintenance agreement to get them through December through June of 2023. So we adjusted their budget so they could maintain that particular software. Also, we've placed their officers' uniforms on a replacement schedule, which means every year the uniforms are going to be replaced for staff there. And so we added an incremental budget for that so that we can start that uniform replacement budget for the department. In addition to that, we looked at vehicle repairs. They do have some units that are in need of some repairs. So two things happen with that area is that previously, the Transportation Department held the budget for vehicle repairs, and in coordinating that with the Transportation Department and the chief with the Police Department, the consensus was that that budget was better transferred to the Police Department so they could schedule their repairs as needed, and they could get those repairs back in as soon as possible. Transportation's focus, of course, is our bus fleet, And so we wanted that to remain there for our students. So that budget was transferred from the transportation department into the police department so they can have direct oversight of their unit repairs on there. And we did go ahead and increase that particular vehicle repair budget for them in addition to the transfer coming over to help them keep up with the demands and the needs in terms of keeping that fleet repaired. The second funding they have is from the state. It's the school safety allotment on there. And with the school safety allotment, that was budgeted last year at $192,330. This year, the proposed budget is $184,233. As you can see there on payroll, you're going to see another negative amount there for $43,071, which is reflecting some savings for that particular state allotment. And that's a result of them having a cybersecurity coordinator that has now been replaced with a cybersecurity position. So that saved that particular allotment some monies from a personnel perspective. What we did, because that money was needed elsewhere, it was then repurposed so that the department in there could provide for software for their emergency management suite software and also their Raptor software for next year. And that is software that they use throughout the year in dealing with their police department functions.
So on the school safety allotment, that one is the 149,
The 184,000?
184,000.
Yes, ma'am, 230.
What does that cover? I know Chief is here. What can you do with that school safety allotment?
Anything regarding safety, for the school as a whole. I know that Adele and I have spoke on it numerous times. And what it has to do with is either salaries of individuals, if we can cover them, programs such as Raptors paid out of that. So anybody going onto a campus has to go and Raptor and make sure that they're not a sex offender and whatnot. And it's just basically a lot of the other little programs that we have with regards to the safety aspect.
And how is that amount determined?
It's a dollar amount per student?
It's a $10 per ADA student, so as our enrollment
an
is
ADA
decreasing,
base.
correct. So it's, I believe it's $8 to $10, I believe it's 8.
I
that-
wanted to think it was $8, but it's like any of the other of our special population programs that we have that are state funded. They're funded by student counts, and it's either an ADA or an FTE, and in this case, it is an ADA. So depending on how our ADA is projected, it may go up, it may go down, based on that flat fee.
Okay.
Yeah, and then of course the radio tower usage that we have to pay here for the meeting.
The radio tower?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chief.
The next budget we have is the athletics budget. The original budget for 2021-2022 was $6,145,894. The proposed budget for 2022-23 is $6,219,167. What we're seeing in this particular budget is that we are increasing the revenue stream for ticket sales. This past year, it was budgeted at $200,000. We are increasing it by $100,000 to $300,000 for this coming school year. And when we look at the expenditures for this particular athletic program, there are several things that we are addressing this year. Part of it has to do with, we did increase their budget because of the new middle school softball, baseball program that we're introducing this coming year. So as a result of that particular program, we've gone in there and increased their budget for the cost of officials, awards, and student travel. The program is expected to serve approximately 400 students, so we've adjusted their budget to accommodate for that particular new program. In addition to that, the district does have 11 natural fields, and we're wanting to be a little bit more proactive in maintaining those fields, and that is looking at the fertilization required and also trying to deal with some of the insect problems we have, so kind of an insect program we have, i.e. ants. So trying to address that. So we're also looking at possibly contracting that or looking at the possibility of maintaining that within our in-house staff, although that's still something we're exploring. But we went ahead and readjusted their budget so that we can look at that and be more proactive at looking at those particular natural fields that we have. Also, what we've included and adjusted this athletic budget for is for annual maintenance for the gym floors, and that involves varnishing the gym floors, and that would be on an annual basis. It's an increase to their benchmark because it would be a recurring cost for them. And also the maintenance of the bleachers that we have in the gyms. Those need to be looked at on an annual basis to make sure they're not deficient in any manner as people utilize them for the games. So we've adjusted their budget to address those now on an annual basis. It did include the high schools and the middle schools for those particular projects. In addition to that, you might see that there was a large decrease under supplies on there for the $175,000. Yes, we are meeting all the student needs that we have. Athletics was not necessarily cut any funding to meet all their athletic programs that they support. But what happened this year is that we do have what we consider their replacement schedules. And those replacement schedules this year included the cheerleading fillers at the middle school and high schools, and it also included uniforms at for their programs. And this year from the middle schools, it was uniforms for football and volleyball, and for the high schools, it was football, powerlifting, and wrestling. But what we did this year is we leveraged the fact that we had some funds because of some of the operational adjustment, minute adjustment, and because of the settlement we had some funds. So what we elected to do this year is fund those out of this year's budget. And that helped us in many ways because we really felt that, one, we do recognize that there is a lot of transportation delay occurring right now with a lot of the supplies that we're receiving. And since these were student-related uniforms, we wanted to make sure that we ordered them as soon as we could so that we could move forward with those orders. In addition to that, there's also the issue that we have with inventories and supply shortages. So even though we place our orders, we're not necessarily guaranteed that they're going to get here at the time we need them, so that, especially when football season starts, our students are ready to go. And so our hope is by doing that and pushing it to this year and not next year, we have a little, I guess, a little advantage maybe to other districts that are ordering a little later than we are. And the hope is that we're able to get the uniforms in for not only the middle and high school cheer teams, but also the uniform replacements that I've identified for middle school and high school, with the hope of getting them here before those programs begin.
Ms. Richards, we make these orders and POs and everything, and if there's a delay in the manufacturer or the shipping to getting that to us, is there a price adjustment, or are we locked into the contract that we originally signed and then we hold them to that?
Typically, we are locked into the agreement on there.
So even if there may be delays on their part to getting that material to us, and now there's additional costs for them,
Yes.
they're not passing it on to us?
We have not seen that happen.
Okay.
Of course, earlier this year, we did order some uniforms. We didn't have much of a delay on that, so it didn't trigger any type of dialogue with the vendor regarding any type of price adjustments. Right now, our understanding is that if they are delayed, there would not be an adjustment to the cost of the uniforms. It's really a supply and a transportation issue at this point. That's what we're looking at. If we run into that issue, we'll know a little bit more and we'll work with purchasing to see what we can do to negotiate that. But we are hoping that because we're placing these orders early enough, that we will get them at the price that they were quoted.
You mentioned earlier about the gymnasium, the bleachers, and the maintenance moving on an annual basis. Are you going to cover the theaters and how frequently they're going to be monitored, and as far as like the curtains, the lighting, the wiring, things of that nature?
That's dialogue that we would have with Ms. Loya, and she'd let us know if there is a replacement schedule pending for her areas, and we will certainly work with her to adjust if we need to.
So that's going to be on a case-by-case, in that case, based on a warranty or based on longevity or use?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a little different from what we're talking about today
Yes.
with the gymnasium
With the
seats
gym,
and all.
right.
All right, thank you.
I have a question in regards to the uniforms. As we're talking about middle school uniforms, I know at the varsity level, we're an Under Armour school district. Does that go across the board to middle school as well? Are we And even, you know, the cheerleading uniforms, you know, is that something that Under Armour provides, or are we having to go outside of the Under Armour family in order to make sure that all of our student representatives are representing accordingly?
Right now, we are Under Armour for certain sports only. So that was a RFQ that was negotiated a few years back.
Right.
And then we're going out for another RFQ. And we added, I believe, in this new one, we added cross-country and track. I believe we added those there. And then we kind of tweaked that one a little bit, just getting feedback from our coaches, because footwear is a big thing. Like, my daughter's a volleyball player. Well, they like Adidas for volleyball.
Right.
Not Under Armour. So, you know, comfort, shoes are very important. So we mainly focus on the uniform at this point. And we put out a new RFQ. I think that already went out, RFP. And then we'll get that in, I believe, in a couple of weeks. And hopefully that's going to get to the June 13th board meeting. I know we've been working with purchasing to go through that. We got a lot of input from our coaches, what they liked about our last one, what they want to tweak a little bit. And so we're Under Armour right now, I believe, till September.
Okay.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that your number, you know, for track, adding track, is it based on the number of teams at the different high schools and, you know, all the way down? So I'm sorry, I'm confused, and I asked the question. So we'll determine how many uniforms we'll buy next year, depending on the number of kids that sign up for track, right?
Yes, yes.
Can we include Special Olympics under track?
Absolutely, sir. And we talked to them this year, so we will most definitely include
And they'll
all
be able to
students.
tap into that and buy uniforms.
Yes, yes.
Whatever we go through, or even if it's before September.
I mean, if that's the case, we should even consider the esports, you know, as these kids are coming up. There's not a reason why they can't be, you know, they're participating sports-wise electronically, but they should be representing the same way that, you know, those kids on the field are.
Yes, sir. I know we also have Tech Wars, so that's something that we'll look
Yeah.
into. The Elevate program is growing. I do want to commend Mr. McClenny. As you all know, he took over physical education, and that was a position in itself. And we've been doing a tremendous job in that area and growing our Elevate program. Our numbers are out the roof, so we know that we're going to be doing extremely well there too. And even Debbie taking all the speaking events on the UIL side as a director for fine arts is something that's going the extra mile for us. So got two rock stars here that were running campuses that are now pushing divisions to greater heights.
To that mind, because he has that PE now, shouldn't his supplies and materials be more? Because he now has to pay for the uniforms for all the athletics in middle school? I mean, because like if I'm in PE, I get a PE shirt and a PE, but it went down, it was $900,000, it went down to $500,000.
Mr. McClenny's going to say heck yes to that.
Because what I don't like is I don't like people coming with budget amendments afterwards. I mean, so it was budgeted at $700,000, it came in at $900,000. Now it's budgeted at $529,000, which seems really, really low, because you now have to equip everybody. I don't know, it
Yes.
just seems really low.
That's a good point, though.
When the P budget was moved to Mr. McClellan, and we can check, we can validate that, but that budget should have already been converted and
It
moved
was.
over to
So
the
he got it.
department?
He got
Yes, yes, sir, yes. Because that's typically our practice whenever we, like you heard us say with HR and community info
Yeah.
and transportation with the police department, the budget follows wherever that activity is. So yes, I think they just
that
validated that it was
includes
done.
PPE.
Yeah, and the reason you're seeing that decline is because those one-time projects that you normally have budgeted, we've taken care of them this year. That's the only reason you're seeing that negative.
Right.
But it looks like a decrease on there, but it has to do with these cheer uniforms and these athletic uniforms that typically we would have ordered them come July, but this time we ordered them in advance. And so they're coming out of this year's budget. That's the only reason you're seeing that negative there. Yes,
So we're still going to get them, but it's going to be taken out of next year's benchmark.
Okay.
And then the PE budget, each campus, especially in the middle school, they take care of their own PE uniform, so I'll put the principal hat back on. So that's through their PE activity front. They usually charge, you know, just depending on, like, I know at the previous campus I was at Moore's, it was $20 for a uniform. and they were able to sustain that and not really make too much money and make sure that the kids are uniformed in their PE classes. So there was never a budget set aside, because I think the PE budget's around $35,000. So that's professional development, that's different things, that's taking care of bus, transportation, kids marathon, you know, different things like that. So as far as if you added uniforms to that, you know, it'd have to go up significantly. But all the middle schools, they take care of their PE uniforms through that. Elementary, they don't dress out. And then high school, you know, that's a different one.
That's right, I
So,
forgot, as a parent, in your orientation, you pay.
yes, so you remember we sold them.
Yeah.
Bring your money to schedule pickup.
If we switch to Adidas, you know, as example, I'm just throwing it out there, it doesn't happen everybody next year, right? It switches over, it's gradual, or how does that work?
Yes, so there's a 3-year replacement schedule. So that will just be gradual. So, you know, if we went a different route, then you're gonna have 2 different types of uniforms. So just depends, you know, some people like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. So that's what you have to go through there.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Continuing on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next budget we have is that for fine arts. The 2021-22 budget was $2,215,349. The proposed budget for 2022-23 is $2,244,767, which is resulting in an increase to that budget of $29,413. So a few little things that have happened in this department is that when it comes to the personnel cost, of course, it has the typical 2%. It has the health insurance contribution incorporated in there. Also, there was a lead teacher position that was converted to a coordinator for fine arts to assist with the demands of the fine arts program on there. In addition to that, we did increase their budget as a result of increasing the student meals by the dollar that we talked about, I think, during the last budget workshop. So we increased their budget to accommodate for that meal increase by $1, an additional $1 within Region 1, and an additional $1 outside of Region 1. Also, as Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, Fine Arts and Ms. Loya are now overseeing the speech and debate program. And as a result of that, they're introducing a summer camp so that some of our students can participate in that. So we've added funding for that particular speech and debate summer camp. It is going to be available to the 3 high schools, and there will be approximately 12 to 15 spots per campus. So they will be looking for some students to fill those spots to join in those events. The other thing that was increased for that budget was an increase for a workshop that's attended in San Antonio by our students. It's the Mariachi Vargas Extravaganza. That workshop is a workshop to improve the technical skills of the students as they perform and for their competition as they compete within the mariachi group. So there is an increased participation in the mariachi programs in all 3 high schools. So we had to increase their budget a little bit more to accommodate more participation from our students for that particular workshop. In addition to that, for this particular program for fine arts, we do have, again, replacement schedules for them also. And this year, we're budgeting band uniforms at the band instruments, new purchases of some band instruments at Mac High, and also some dance team fillers at the high schools, and choir risers at the middle schools. That's going to be what's going to be purchased this year in order to accommodate some of these needs. And again, these particular ones, we addressed them the same way we did with athletics. We're actually purchasing, getting our requisitions in this year so that we have the items we need for these replacement one-time type of schedules for next year's for the departments themselves. So pretty much what we discussed with the universe with athletics, we're doing with fine arts on there. And leveraging the ability to be able to process these POs a little earlier than we normally would. Again, definitely because of the environment we're working in these days, we're really trying to address some of the lag times that we're seeing in other areas. And
Ms. Richards, back in the day, I remember Trustee Saldivar asking this information in a different way where it would be cost per student. So in athletics and fine arts, do we know what the participation is divided by the budget? Like, are we spending $600 a student in athletics versus, you know, what, I would like to know, what's the amount we're spending per
Right
student?
now, we're not actually allocating their budgets based on a per unit allocation or per student allocation. It's not necessarily a dollar amount per
Right.
activity on there. It's certainly something we could look at. It does get, not that it can't be done, but it gets a little complicated because sometimes you've got, of course, students participating in multiple sports,
Right.
and
But
stuff
would
like
their
that,
teams
so.
number be the same for, if I'm a basketball player and a football player and in track, it would count me once, wouldn't it?
Well, not necessarily, because if you're participating in those different sports, they require different type of equipment for the sports. It'll also require different meals, depending on how you're traveling, so everyone has an
But
incremental
what I'm saying
cost
is you
to
can
it.
still get the information. You can you still know how many people are truly participating versus the cost of the program in both programs.
Yes, yes. But we do find that the cost for athletics seems to be a little higher cost than that to run the fine arts program. And of course, we've got the insurance liability because the students are participating in sports that are more physical maybe than fine arts. So there is a cost differential between the two programs, not necessarily because we've allocated a per unit allotment to it, but just because to run the program itself. Of course, it's more costly to maintain a football field, the lights, the scoreboard, you know, than an event at the theater. We're paying for officials, we're paying for game workers, you know, just the cost for athletic programs is just multiplied compared to a cost of running a production at your high school theater, just because there's so many ancillary moving parts occurring to help the event occur. So you do tend to see athletics just being a little bit more costly than you would fine arts. But certainly working with both our directors, we certainly try to keep our pulse on their needs. And so as Dr. Gonzalez has mentioned, they're part of the executive leadership precisely for that, so that we know where the needs are and we're helping them address the needs that they have so that they can provide the services to our students. So we are looking at it from that angle in terms of their feedback, continuous feedback as to what their needs are. A lot of their needs were also addressed through the ESSER funds. So there was a lot of money placed into both programs as a result of the ESSER funding that we received. So again, they're certainly on our radar. There are two programs that we're looking at. We may not give a per pupil allocation for them, but we certainly do know that they're important programs in addition to all our instructional programs. And we are constantly working them to make sure that the programs they've got the proper funding for it. And most recently, Dr. Gonzalez has spearheaded the introduction of new programs in both areas.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so we've been able to do that, and we're bringing in the budgets that go with that. So it may not be the per pupil, but it's certainly something that we have our pulse on. We work with our directors, and we are able, even with that in mind, bringing in new programs and making sure that they've got the appropriate budgets to make those new programs successful as the current ones that we have.
TASB just came out with an article that talked about the cost, on average cost per program and how much allocation by student, and I thought it was a pretty good article. It's a very general term, and maybe that's the approach we should have as a general term versus, finite of it. And if I can find it, I'll share it with you all, but I thought it was a very good, insightful about how school funding is actually utilized by school districts.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Gonzalez.
I did want to just commend the team because one of the things that we know that research clearly shows is that participating in extracurriculars, whether it's athletics or fine arts or CTE or any program, anything bigger than yourself, puts you in a position to excel in adulthood. And I want to commend the team because we brought kids in to the auditoriums that weren't participating in anything. We got that slice of the pie and we enticed them to participate. Many of them joined either fine arts or athletics. And then for those that still weren't in anything, we started to ask, well, what are you interested in? And that's where esports came in, and that's where Tech Wars came in, and that's where all these innovative ideas came in. So the name of the game for us is to get as many kids, as if not all of them, participating in something, because we know how important it is. And that's why we value fine arts and athletics and CTE and everything else. And we're just so blessed to have Debbie and Brian leading those divisions. I know that, Debbie ran a National Blue Ribbon School, and Brian ran Flagship Middle School. And and now they're here running our department. So both departments are in great hands, and we're doing all that we can with the limited resources to provide opportunities for our students.
And if you were to tell a theater teacher, hey, you can have the budget of the football team, they'll get real elaborate on where they're going to spend that money. So, you know, to say that they don't match there, just give the theater teacher the opportunity, and we'll get that, you know, that funding there situated. So.
And I think we see that enthusiasm with those black boxes that
Right,
we're
right.
building. I mean, they are just really, really excited about that. So yes,
Well,
we
just
see-
as athletics is excited about the press box
Yes,
and the
exactly,
AstroTurf and all the
yes.
scoreboards and everything else.
Yeah, we're excited about everything.
Yes, we
But
are.
to be fair, athletics does bring a little bit more revenue to the district, and also athletics also incorporates fine arts. There's the band and everybody else participate. So I think it's gonna be hard to kind of, you know, say we spend only this on athletics and this on fine arts. They, you know, I've seen football players sing the national anthem before a football game to go play a football game. So it's hard to do that, you know. So anyway, I think I know where you're going with
Yeah,
that.
I'm just
but-
saying, level the playing field a little. I mean, you have
Well-
basketball, light dark, light dark, light dark. I mean, let's have that in
I
the
totally
fine arts.
understand, and I think we're getting there. I think though the numbers justify it. I mean, I was gonna help you with the MACI, but then she said there was road numbers are higher, so I think as long as, but I do agree with you on everything that you said, and we have made investment on all of them. I think I'm just a little sensitive both, you know, and I'm talking about my son singing the national anthem before a football game, so I'm sensitive to how they you know, they overlap each other, support each other, so. Anyway. I know we don't have a lot of time, but, you know, Mr. President, if she wants to go through that pretty quick, and then we can kind of wait to ask questions at the end, or?
That's,
Yeah, that,
6 of 33.
yes.
We still have a lot, that's why.
So that concludes my presentation with the superintendent's office and his departments. Now we're going to move on. The next division we have is instructional leadership. And we do have Ms. Iris Luna, our chief financial officer, that will go over those particular budgets.
No questions, next one?
That means I don't have to talk.
No, no questions for you, Ms. Luna.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Gonzalez. As Ms. Richards mentioned, I will be discussing the Associate Superintendent Instructional Leadership Department budgets, which consists of the Professional Learning and Literacy Department, the Early Education Allotment, and of course, the Student Assessments Department. As Ms. Richards had said earlier, of course, we're considering the proposed 2% salary increase, the $26.50 per employee per month increase in health contributions, and of course, the difference in our debt, our capital leases now with GASB 87. On these slides, you'll notice that there is blue and green tables. I will focus on the blue tables for today's discussion. For those that have green tables, they feed into the top blue tables summarizing the department total. Under the instructional leadership budget, it increased by 8.25%. The biggest change was due to the movement of the Professional Learning and Literacy Department and the Student Assessment Department from the Instructional Services Division to Mrs. V's umbrella. The summer school assessment budget decreased, right there. The summer school assessment budget decreased by 33.73%. The summer assessments for elementary and middle school are no longer being done. This reduction was redistributed to the Student Assessment and Professional Learning and Literacy departments. Moving on to the Student Assessments Department's budget, it increased by 1.95%. This is a netted amount with increases within the supplies, materials, and other operating costs, and decreases in payroll. Moving on to the Professional Learning and Literacy Department's budget, it increased by 18.52%. Salaries increased due to a clerk position added during the 21-22 fiscal year. Professional and contracted services, supplies and materials, and other operating costs are also increased due to the redistribution of the summer school assessments budget. And the last one is the early education allotment, which is a state-funded allotment. It was decreased by 11.44%. This $417,000 decrease is due to the state allotment being decreased due to the decrease in ADA.
Thank you, Ms. Luna.
Any questions for Ms.
this segment?
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next division is the Division of Instructional Services, and Dr. Rosada de Hoyos will lead the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I will provide the instructional service division budget. I will start with the instructional services combined budget. It is a combination. It is a combination of 3 accounts that fund the local portion of the instructional services division, office staff salaries, substitutes for lead meetings and trainings. For the Fund 199M, this fund provides the monies for the math department's curriculum and programs such as chess, robotics, UIL academic expenses. We do see a decrease there that reflects savings in the contracting services for the math curriculum. The digital learning and library services, you may move to the blue, yes, right there. This department has 2 combined budget accounts. We do see an increase to support esports and tech wars efforts and staff stipends in this budget. We move on now to Maribel Elizondo, the special education. In the special education combined budget, this department oversees the special education combined budget and the regional day school program for the deaf combined budget. In the special education combined budget, we have an increase in payroll due to the increase of staff needed to serve the higher number of students served. For the RDSPD budget, we see a small decrease in revenues due to the decreased enrollment among the 24 districts that we serve. In 2021, we served 223 students. 21-22, we served 205. I just said RSD. We go now to state and federal. Right there, yes. The state and federal programs department's combined budget is a combination of 4 accounts: Title I, Title II, Title IV, and state compensatory. The budget reflects an estimated decrease based on enrollment trends. The College Career and Counseling Department's combined budget is a combination of 4 accounts, including the budget for the Family Treatment Program. The increase in payroll is to cover the College Career Coordinator added to this department, and also the contract day increase for 2 licensed professional counselors under the Family Treatment Program. For the Dyslexia Section 504 and RTI Department combined budget, we can see an increase in payroll due to the increase of staff needed to serve the higher number of students. The Bilingual Education Department has a combined budget of local, state, and federal funds. The local funds pay for teacher salaries for the required summer bilingual program, and state and federal funds pay for resources, stipends, summer bilingual enrichment programs, and teacher staff development. We see a reduction in the state and federal funding based on estimated allotment following enrollment trends. The Advanced Academic Department has 2 combined budgets. The Advanced Academic combined budget comprised of local and state funding to cover teacher staff development for dual enrollment, advanced placement, and gifted and talented. The budget reflects a reduction following enrollment trends. The CCMR budget is based on the estimated state allotment resulting from the 2021 graduates. This budget primarily funds college readiness assessments such as TSI, AP, PSAT, and SAT exams. The budget reflects a reduction due to state funding. The Career and Technical Education Department's budget is a combination of local, state, and federal funding. The reduction in the state funding is based on estimated allotment following the trend in enrollment. And last, we have the Migrant Department's federally funded budget This is a combination of year one and year two funding. The decrease in the budget is due to changes in year two of the funding formula at the national level. However, the department has prepared for this by reducing payroll costs through attrition over several years. The department is also cutting spending where possible without affecting the services provided to students. Thank you.
So it's safe to say that wherever we see a drop in funding, that's ADA that's the reason why. But we are also offsetting this with the different grants that we apply and receive, correct?
Correct, but when it comes to state and federal, it's an allotment that we get based on how many students we have.
Right.
And so if we're looking at the enrollment trends, so this is estimate, that's what we think we might be getting. Obviously, we adjust our funding or our numbers based on the NOCA that we do get at the beginning of the school year.
Right. Okay. We're good?
Just in the area of special ed, what's the total population increase from last year to this year, you know?
I don't have the numbers for special ed. I have the RDSPD.
And that's all you presented was the RDS?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
there is an increase on the expense for special education because of the number of students that we're serving, such as the ones for dyslexia as well, because we are serving more students. I did explain and gave you the numbers on the RDSPD because we had a decrease.
Gotcha. But there has been a general increase in the area of special education other
Definitely.
than the regional school for the deaf?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes. We had an increase on special education and an increase in dyslexia, but a decrease on the RDSPD.
Are you including dyslexia as special ed?
Not in this particular one. Dyslexia is separate and apart.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not
because,
considered special ed.
yeah, some students might be just dyslexic, but not served under special education.
Yeah, it's like ADHD.
Right,
It's not
they're
a
two
special ed
different ones, yeah.
Good.
Okay, so next I'll cover HR, benefits, and student support services. So in HR, there you go, thank you. So in the HR, the variance increased by 0.02. And the biggest negative there was supplies and materials when the retirement ceremony moved over to community information, about a $20,000 change over there. So very minimal change in the budget to HR. Sliding down to benefits, it increased 4.82%. Excuse me. The biggest reason there was overtime expenses this year increased because of the peak open enrollment periods and also loading the payroll actions in the new Skyward system. Moving on to student support services. Their budget actually decreased by 0.79%. They had budget for overtime for transcriptions for large cases, legal cases. And also they have some government open records systems increase for government QA. That's the program that they use for open records. And of course, there's a JJAP. We will be expecting a refund for about $36,000 coming back. We've only sent 1 or 2 students out there, so that's really good. So, any questions?
Our next presenter is Ms. Adele Felix. She'll go over the district operations budgets.
Good evening. I will start with my division 731. It's pretty consistent. It is decreased by 3.51%, which is a decrease of $5,723. As far as strategic partnership and outreach program, we did see an increase due to the 2% proposed rate, as well as the transfer of the school MIT software for about $26,000. For warehouse, we have consistently decreased by less than 1%, about $5,687. For technology, Department of Technology, it did increase 6.98%, and that is due to the 2% proposed rate, the restructure of that department with 4 positions, new tech support, as well as the network surveillance cameras and the Google Workspace that we've entered into for storage for all our teachers. The facilities maintenance and operations, that increase is due to, basically in payroll, the others are reclasses. They're pretty consistent besides payroll, which is 173,000, and that is due to the 2%, as well as adding a new assistant director due to the increase in projects. Transportation, we've actually decreased by 4%. 133,673, and that's because they are condensing the positions and being able to work operationally with what they currently have. We also have dispatchers that are licensed to drive buses in the need of filling those positions, and that's been strategically done. And the rest of it is pretty consistent. It's the decrease in payroll.
With what we're seeing in everyday life, do we have a locked-in fuel price? Is that something?
No, we don't have a locked-in fuel price. We do buy in bulk, but it is going to be affected by our fuel costs. However, I know that we have put some monies aside to address those situations.
We're going to monitor it for next year, so we are setting aside some monies through assigned fund balance to see how it affects not only transportation, but other departments that have vehicles, like our police department and so on and so forth.
And FMO.
And FMO, exactly.
Department of Health, it did increase by $194,000, and that is due to the additional support we hired, that's 6 health assistants. Student operations increased by 156, and that's due to the closing of the print shop, where we had to transfer those 2 positions into the student operations division.
I'm sorry, Ms. Felix, going back to transportation.
Transportation?
Yeah, no, health services, I'm
okay.
sorry. In the past, our position was that everybody was an RN on the campuses, so we still have registered nurses on campus.
On each campus, we have a registered.
But there's been an additional healthcare providers added to staff.
Correct.
And how many of them are there, and where are those folks?
We have 6 that are they rotate. They rovers, correct, thank you. And they go to the different, as needed, as assigned, as the need. Let's say a nurse is out or for something. I know when we were doing the vaccines, they had to cover certain areas. So they do rotate between.
And are these, at what level are they? LVNs?
Medical assistants?
Medical assistants, okay.
And some are LVNs. I don't have the exact number of how many are LVNs and how many are medical assistants.
Of the 6, some are medical assistants and some are LVNs.
Correct.
Are these funding through what source?
This is through 199. We do have others through the ESSER.
And are they aware then when the ESSER runs?
That has been made clear. For the ESSER, this would not be, this is local funding like the 199. However, the ESSER positions are aware that it is contracted for 3 years.
All right, so the 6 individuals that are either medical assistant or an LVN are under 199. But you mentioned ESSER. How many individuals are under the ESSER?
I'll get that information for you.
Okay, and how are they being, they're also within the health services as well?
Yes, well, they are campus coded, yes.
Are any of them on staff for mental health assessments or anything of that nature?
Not under the health services. For council?
Yeah,
But
in
it's
this area,
different,
under
no.
health services?
No.
No. Okay. All right, thank you.
And the last one is the child nutrition program. We are seeing an increase of revenues, and that is due to no longer having remote learning, and we expect to see the dinner participation increase. And also, we've noted that we've adjusted accordingly throughout this fiscal year as those remote numbers decrease, meaning they were back in the classroom. So we're expecting a similar result. It also should be noted that we do pay general fund about 8.27%, which approximates about $1 million. We're hoping that that level is reached as well. So then that reflects the biggest change in expenditures is due to the change in the calendar to have all employees work, not all employees, to have some employees working summer. So it used to be through a volunteer basis, but now it's, it's built into your calendar. And as well as decentralizing the kitchen and adding those additional duties. So that did increase our payroll costs.
So I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
So these individuals, they're now being, so their salary will be adjusted accordingly because they're on an hourly rate. Is that correct?
Yes, they were always on an hourly rate, but now that we've added additional calendar days for them so that they are here for the summer as well as to not depend on volunteering.
So what days are they? How many work days?
Two,
240?
242, I believe.
242, okay. And then going back to the health services, just to be clear, every single elementary school, middle school, and high school campus has a registered nurse.
Correct.
there. That has not changed.
That has not
You
changed.
just added additional
Support.
to support because of the pandemic, or there was
That-
medical needs of the children? or-
It's because of the pandemic.
So is it planned that with the pandemic getting to a point where it's less of an issue? Is there a plan to move away
We
from
will
this,
have
or is
to,
this-
No,
There's
the
no-
plan
no.
is we want registered nurses at every elementary school.
I know, but right now you have 6 additional individuals, either a medical assistant or an LVN.
Yeah, we would scale back at that point
Okay.
to the additional. But we definitely want the RNs and most definitely want the peace officers.
Gotcha, thank you.
Could we keep some of those, maybe scale down, but keep some of the extra in case a nurse is out or, you know?
Yeah, we do have rover nurses and we could look at the pool to see if it's adequate for the need that we have.
Thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Again, I'm trying to find every dollar every which way, so.
Yeah. No, but I think we need to be prepared, you know, in case we can't
Yeah.
always.
But only 10% of all school districts in the state of Texas have registered nurse on their district, and even less have it on every single campus, and we're one of the few that does.
I think it's an excellent service to have.
Exactly. And it's proved itself during the pandemic, because we were able to transition very quickly and help the community.
Sorry, Mr. President.
He's got
I
nowhere to go.
apologize.
No, I'm telling you to look at, talk into the microphone, please.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Thank you.
President. I apologize. We are on page 30 of
I'm
33.
fine with time, that's not a
Onward.
problem, but the audio guys open the door and look at us, and they're like,
Sorry,
microphones.
audio guys.
Thank you.
Yes, we are on the final division. It's the district, business operations division. We'll be going over the assistant superintendent's budget, the payroll, accounting, CFO, business services, and purchasing budgets on here. We'll begin with the budget for the assistant superintendent. Last year's original budget was $254,721. This year, the proposed budget is $255,471. And a lot of that has to do with the compensation adjustments we're making. You're gonna see the $3,000 deduction or reduction there. That's due to the copier going from an operating lease to a capital lease, so we're moving that budget to another budgeted line item. And so those are gonna be the major changes you're seeing in that budget. The next one is the purchasing budget. And in the purchasing budget, again, you're seeing the copier lease of $3,010. You're also seeing the pay adjustment of $20,206. The budget for last year was $729,714. This proposed for next year is $746,911. And again, that's an increase of $17,197. It does include, again, the pay increases and some TASB recommended equity adjustments on there. The next budget we have is business services. The budget for last year was $434,652. This year, the proposed budget is $449,758. And we're seeing your pay adjustments on there of an increase of $13,111. Also seeing a slight increase of $2,000, and that has to do with an increase in the contract for our investment advisor. $2,000 increase for that particular contract, and that is for business services. The next department we have is the accounting department. Again, very straightforward. You're seeing the increases in compensation. You're seeing the transfer of the copier lease occurring there because it's being reclassified from an operating to a capital lease. And the final budget we have, went a little too far, is the payroll budget. Last year's budget was $482,904. We're proposing that budget for next year at $497,055, a seeing the same basic things we're seeing with all of them, an increase to compensation due to the 2% proposed pay increase. And also the 4,000 represents the transfer of the copier from an operating lease to a capital lease. And that concludes our report regarding review of district budgets.
Any questions from Mrs. Richards or the district operations team? Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, this is a high-performing district. We do great things with the tools that we are given. We appreciate everybody that's come forward and presented today. It is a heavy decision that we bear, and that's the choice that we made to come up and to volunteer our time and services to this district. So I appreciate everybody coming up and joining us today. Dr. Gonzalez has a few closing remarks for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, a big thank you to our board. We wouldn't be the high-performing district that we are without our board and without the decisions that you help us make. So from the entire McAllen ISD family to our board, we say thank you, and this helps us tremendously. I know that as we went through this workshop, heavy on our hearts was a situation that happened in Uvalde CISD. So I wanted to extend my condolences to Superintendent Hal Harrell, to Board President Luis Fernandez, to Building Principal Mandy Gutierrez. Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas went through a horrific situation today. 18 children lost their lives and 3 adults. And, you know, as educators, we take great pride in educating our children academically, socially, emotionally, and keeping them safe. So just want Uvalde to know that McAllen ISD is here to support you. McAllen, Texas is here to support you in any way that we can. Our hearts are broken. There's really no words. And as an educator, I'm heartbroken. As a dad, even more. And I know that this board holds the same sentiments, and so does the entire McAllen ISD team. So to Uvalde, Texas, from McAllen, Texas, we are so sorry. We're here to support you. You all stay strong and know that the rest of the state and the rest of the country and the rest of the world is praying for you all. And we're very sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. All right, that'll wrap up our board workshop at 8:21. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? We don't need a motion or a second, but we're just going through the formalities. Thank you. I appreciate all the help. At 8:21, we are wrapping our budget workshop.
Great job, ladies.